Apologize for what is a much longer meeting than we have had for probably at least the last year. But at the last board meeting, we had had a snowstorm. And in order to be able to do some appointments that had to be done, we had a very, very abbreviated meeting and we're over within an hour. And so what you're seeing tonight, if you don't normally come to these, is a much longer agenda. It is just so you know, and shouldn't scare you away, it's not reflective of actually what our agendas have been over the last year or so. So again, for those that didn't know, at the last board meeting, which was the 4th of January, we very quickly met just for going into, we had public comment and we went and did our appointments for human resources and also for positions we needed like treasurer and things like that. So with that in mind, if we are now going to do the pledge, and you are welcome to stand as you so choose. It is behind us. I pledge allegiance The mission statement of the City School District of Albany is that we will work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. With that, I turn it over for Mrs. Adams, the superintendent's report.
Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. I would like to begin tonight by recognizing one of our dedicated community partners. I don't know if Mr. Ellis was able to make it here tonight, but this is the chair. Mr. Ellis is the chair of the George Biddle Kelly Education Foundation. The foundation has teamed up with Albany Medical Center and corporate leaders throughout our region to launch the Collegiate Scholars of Tomorrow program. We have been advertising this on our website, and what this program does, it is open to all third graders throughout the city. The goal is to encourage students and families to begin planning for college during the formative years of the educational journey. We would like to remind our public that the deadline to apply for this program is tomorrow. There are a limited number of slots available, and the GBK Foundation is focusing on economically disadvantaged third graders who are performing at a high level of 2 or above. So you may find the applications and more information about the GBK Foundation at the GBK Foundation website and on our school district website. I'd also like to announce that Chef Valentine over at Brooklyn, her segment aired today on Channel 13. She was nominated as one of the top 13 teachers in the Capital Region for the 2017-2018 school year. I would like to also take this time to remind our families about important dates coming up for our annual Magnet and Pre-K lotteries. Applications for our Magnet Elementary Lottery are available now and must be submitted by January 31st. The Magnet Lottery is open to families citywide and applies to all available seats and our 4 Magnet programs beginning in kindergarten. We have a separate lottery for pre-K seats at all of our schools and community locations. That includes pre-K in our Magnet programs. If you are interested in enrolling your child in pre-K, those applications will be available beginning January 29th. The Magnet and pre-K lotteries both will be held March 14th. Please go to our website so that you can have the most current information about the applications for both of these lotteries. January Regent exams are coming up next week at Albany High School. There will be no classes at Albany High from Monday through Thursday. Only those students taking Regents will need to report on those days for their exams. Classes will resume for all Albany High School students next Friday, January 26th. Regents review classes have been offered at Albany High all month long and conclude tomorrow because the exams begin on Monday. Our annual district spelling bee is coming up tomorrow morning at Hackett Middle School. The event brings together the spelling champions from all of our elementary and middle schools to compete to compete for the opportunity to move on to the regional spelling bee later this winter. I would like to congratulate Albany High School freshman Jedrick Arisom for his excellent performance as a member of the Falcons bowling team last week. He had a high game among the highest game among the 120 bowlers competing at the Schenectady New Year's Bowling Invitational Tournament. His outstanding achievement helped Albany to end in 8th place out of 20 teams. Our final MWBE Workforce Development Community Workshop is coming up next Tuesday. The workshop will be held at Edmund J. O'Neill School of Excellence from 6 to 7:30 in the cafeteria. We have a flyer with more information available here tonight, and you may also visit the Rebuilding Albany High School section of our website to find out more. The AFT 19th Annual Center for School Improvement Leadership Conference will be held this weekend in New York City. The conference theme is creating safe and welcoming school communities through positive school climate and culture. Members of Cabinet, along with ABSTA and ABSA leadership, will attend this conference. I would now like to invite Principal Marie Callahan to the microphone to tell us about the great things happening here at Albany School of Humanities. And I know that she has visitors with her, so please feel free to introduce them.
Okay, thank you very much. This is my assistant principal, Amy Irwin, and this is Dr. Brandon. We're going to start by thanking all of you for having this time to present the wonderful things that are happening at our building.
So the ASH mission statement. At ASH, we are a global family. We recognize our common humanity and respect and celebrate all cultures. We have a shared responsibility to protect our planet and create a more peaceful world. And through our PBIS motto, through our ROAR tickets and other incentives for students, we celebrate respect others, always be responsible and safe.
For our demographics, we have 569 students, pre-K through 6, 29 classrooms. For our special area teachers, we have 2 PE, 1 art, 1 librarian, 1 music, 1 band, 1 orchestra, and 1 theater arts, and a computer teaching assistant. Our student population is made up of 268 male, 301 female. Students with disabilities is 14%, ENL is 6%, Black is 51%, Hispanic 18%, White 15%, Asian 8%, and multiracial 8%. Next, I want to just quickly highlight some of our SEP progress that we've been working on so far this school year. We have 17 SEP activities. All have been completed or are in progress at this time. We've made sure that all of our activities that we're working on as a building fall into 3 main categories. They are student engagement, data-driven instruction, and mindfulness. In the area of student engagement, an example that we're really stressing throughout the building is using accountable talk in the classrooms. We have weekly grade level data team meetings happening K through 6. And mindfulness, we have our mentor program, which you're going to hear from some of our students in a minute. We have our Mindful Mondays, and we have our mindful moments every day.
These are just a few highlights that we wanted to celebrate. We have had 95% or higher student attendance every month so far this year. It's something we're very proud of. We've also had 95% or higher staff attendance over the last 3 months. We had 75% of students in grades 3 through 6 participating in group or partner work, and that was as noted in the recent student surveys that were taken. One example is, again, we have a 4% growth on 4th grade Ames web testing. We've had a decrease in discipline referrals in the building since October. We have daily, weekly, and monthly behavioral recognitions for our students. We've had 95% student attendance in PBIS celebrations. We had 65% attendance at parent-teacher conferences, and we have a new Mindful Mentor program that we wanted to talk further with you. So at this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Curtis and then students Kaylin, Jaslyn, and Najir to come up.
Good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Miss Curtis. I've been a teacher here for 22 years, and we have just adopted this program over the last 3.5 years, and it's called Mindful Moments. We use a calm classroom curriculum, and the change in our students and our staff that we have seen has been wonderful. Just teaching our students strategies to relax themselves, prepare themselves for the day, prepare themselves for assessments and different things, even just preparing to walk home or get on the bus. A strategy to relax and be in the moment and enjoy the moment and be calm. So I have some students here who would like to, these are our Mindful Mentors. They travel to classrooms at 8:15 in the morning, and they work with our younger students to model the program, and it's been very successful. So after they present, I'm going to present a mindful moment. Thank you so much. And this is Jaslyn Gorasing.
My name is Jaslyn Gorsing. I'm in the 6th grade. My favorite subject is math because even though it sometimes is a struggle, it's something to work toward. One thing I like about school is learning something new every day. One positive event going on at our school right now is the Black History Month project.
My name is Najir Bryant, and I'm in 6th grade. My favorite subject is math because of all the ratios and number lines we get to do, and all types of math problems. I like gym because of all the activities we get to do. One of the positive things I've done in school is come in 2nd place in spelling bee twice, and also making honor roll. Thank you, Ms. Curtis and Ms. Callahan, for choosing me to participate in mindful mentoring.
My name is Kaylin Capeza, and I'm in the 6th grade. My favorite subject is science because it is so fascinating. What I like about school are the teachers and all the different specials. The positive events at ASH are some of our theater arts and performances.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to practice the mindful moment that we're currently working on. The mindful moment, we go through a week of practice for each session, and then we switch on every Monday. So right now we are practicing sitting in stillness, and I invite everybody to join us. So I go on the loudspeaker, and right now I would say, "Good evening, Ash. It's time for our mindful moment. We are going to practice sitting in stillness. Sit up straight and comfortably in your chair. Rest your hands on your desk or in your lap. Close your eyes. Feel your feet flat on the floor. Relax your shoulders, back, and down. Let your whole body be still. Bring your attention to your head. Bring your attention to your shoulders. Bring your attention to your hands. Bring your attention to your knees. Bring your attention to your feet. Feel the stillness in your whole body. Feel the air moving in and out of your nose. Now, take a deep breath in, hold, and exhale slowly. Notice how you feel. Slowly open your eyes. This has been our mindful moment. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.
Don't fall asleep. So thank you, Ms. Curtis, Kaylin, Jaslyn, and Nazir. That was wonderful. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Brandon, a longtime Albany resident and current first grade support system staff in my building, and two of her first grade students, Layla and Isabella.
Testing. Good evening. It seems a little strange to be sitting on this side of the table, but be that as it may, I have a script and I've timed myself, and hopefully I will be no more than 5 minutes. Probably not even that. To Superintendent Adams, Assistant Superintendent Wilson Turner, Ash Principal Culligan, Ash Assistant Principal Irwin, and Ash first grade educators Cindy Hauser and Pamela Mantis, and Caroline Adams. And last but definitely not least, the precious children at Albany School of Humanities and throughout our district. Thank you for this opportunity to give a brief synopsis of the proposal I presented to ASH administration in December. This proposal consists of a pilot program to run at ASH the 2018-19 school year. The crux of the program has to do with increasing classroom support for first grade teachers. Currently, the class size for elementary is, I believe, 23 students. I was on the board when those numbers were set back when Linda Rudnick was with us. If we keep this number, the support that we are requesting will be necessary in the form of a teacher's assistant in the classroom. Our hope is with this pilot, the following 3 strategic goals will be accomplished. Number 1, one-on-one assistance to the approximate half of the class that's struggling to keep up academically. Number 3, to keep the children that are on task academically challenged. Number 3, to assist with the 2 to 3 serious student behavioral problems that are prevalent and all too often prevent the teacher from teaching. These 3 are the purpose and goal of this pilot. Please keep in mind the need to reach these goals is not just unique to ASH. Before I became a part-time building sub at ASH, I subbed elementary buildings throughout the district and saw the same problems. Ultimately, with the success of this pilot program at ASH, the need for expansion and implementation throughout our elementary schools should follow. In conclusion, the big question mark, of course, is money. In order to implement this pilot, we're going to have some money. And I will say what I have always said to Bill Hogan, at least 4 of the 8 years when I was on the board. He is our trusty financial manager. Bill, go find the bucks. Get the money. In a moment, these 2 bright young shining stars beside me, first graders, will present each BOE member with a binder that details the proposal for this pilot. After you review the binder, we would be more than glad to come back and answer any in-depth questions you might have. Thank you, my friends, board BOE members, for your precious time. Now, my ASH first graders are here, and they're going to introduce themselves. Stand up.
My name is Layla Wall. I am in first grade at Ash School. My teacher is Miss Cindy Hauser. This is my classmate, and she will introduce herself.
My name is Isabella Brunel Chambers. I am in first grade at Ash, and Miss Cindy Hauser is my teacher.
We would like to present the Albany Board with a copy of our proposal. When I call your name, would you please stand and receive your binder? President Sue Adler. Vice President Ann Savage. Secretary Vicki Smith. Board Member Ellen Roach. Board Member Jen Lang. Board Member Sridhar Shatar. Board Member Tabitha Wilson.
Thank you, ladies. Can we get some applause for my girls? Please remember, once you've gone over your binder, we are open and willing and ready to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you so much, my friends, board members. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, this concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you.
So we are up to the public comment time, and just read the statement that we normally read. The Albany Board of Education welcomes district parents, residents, students, and other people to our meeting. Community involvement at board meetings is encouraged so that we can better understand your views. By law, individual student information and particular personnel issues cannot be discussed in public. And what that means is we're talking about information that would identify a staff member or information that would identify a student. So we can talk about issues and talk about general positions, general issues, but not about specific personnel at specific schools. I say that in particular because of the sign-in sheet this evening. We welcome your comments and we encourage you to share specific student or staff concerns that are particular directly with the superintendent or other appropriate staff. Please note that the board generally does not respond to public comment. If you need a response, please consider contacting us via email, phone, or postal mail. When recognized by me, please state your name and city of residence. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes, and speakers will be notified by me when their time has expired. I'm just waiting for Ms. Smith, who is our able timekeeper as well as being our secretary. Rebecca Zimmerman.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Zimmerman, and I'm the current president of the Pine Hills PTA. This week, we submitted letters and petitions signed by 326 parents, faculty, and staff opposing the removal of a homeschool coordinator position in exchange for an assistant principal position. The Pine Hills community is here in solidarity tonight to assert our position. An HSC can be a central figure as a role model, mentor, program coordinator, and a social emotional support for students. A good homeschool coordinator can help students find their voice, learn to solve problems, mediate conflict, find compromise, and stay regulated to learn. Changing out an HSC for an AP at this point seems to be a hasty decision without room for transition periods, without room for ensuring our school doesn't lose ground. We recognize that different schools have different needs, and we do not mean to take away from needier schools. But when a school is working, those strengths should be applauded, maintained, and built upon. We want to build on what we have, not tear it down and start over. Our aim is to become a school in good standing, not slide to a priority school. A good HSC is a tremendous asset to a school and should not be an afterthought. However, HSCs do not have formal professional development and do not formally share best practices. When there are highly valued and skilled HSCs, why not leverage that to engage in a discussion of how to initiate mentorship and best practices sharing among HSCs so that multiple schools can benefit from good HSC models? And finally, while the PTA did not request an AP in addition to an HSC, we think this would be a wise investment. Large focus schools such as Delaware, New Scotland, and Pine Hills could only benefit from having both an AP and an HSC. Why do these three focus schools have only one supporting administrator when North Albany and Montessori Magnet also have only one supporting administrator, but which are both in good standing and which both have at least 100 fewer kids? Why should we have to give up an HSC? Why isn't the conversation instead about which large focus schools might be deserving of both an AP and an HSC if budgeting allows? Until such time, the Pine Hills community wants to retain an HSC and forego hire of an AP. I close with words from our support staff letter. Quote, "It is our contention that an HSC is better suited for our school culture than an assistant principal. An HSC is an integral part to our school's successful functioning. Please consider the unanimous input from all 326 signatories at Pine Hills when making your decision about whether to grant our request to retain an HSC. Thank you all for your time and your service, and I want to thank the Pine Hills community for coming out tonight."
Thank you very much, Ms. Zimmerman. Ms. Khan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pawasha Khan, and I'm part of the lunch aid staff at Pine Hills Elementary School and PTA member. Our Pine Hill Elementary School is a leader in me school, and I believe that our homeschool coordinator is an embodiment of the 7 habits of highly effective people. Our HSC goes above and beyond the call of
Ms.
duty.
Khan,
Yes?
if you could limit yourself to the position and not to be speaking particularly about a person who is inhabiting that position, which is what you're doing. I know you're speaking in a positive way, but we don't have either positive or negative comments when we're talking about specific actual personnel. We don't allow that. But if you have something written and you wanted to submit it and it spoke directly to that person, we could do it. We just can't have it publicly disseminated. So either you could speak about keeping an HSC position, or you could take the praise that you're giving that person and you can give that either through email or in writing to the
Oh, I
superintendent.
understand, okay.
So sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
I know, I'm sorry as well.
The HSC is supposed to maintain a bridge between the home and the school, and with our theme being the leader and me, HSC helps enable our community to understand that good citizenry doesn't end with your individual success, but like you are empowering others. They may be struggling and may be left behind, or if you're off track, they'll give you the support or nudge that you need to remain on the right path. And there have been several students that may be forgone, like, oh, this he's a lost case, but the homeschool coordinator helps go find the deeper problem and resolves that with the parents and any other community members that may be willing to get involved. And an assistant principal, while they may be good in the maintaining order, a sense of order within the building, the homeschool coordinator maintains relationships between the students. And at the end of the day, we're there for the students. We want their success. So giving them like a sense of power, that you're being heard and you're not just being lectured all the time and given directions, that there's someone there to lend an ear and like put your, be your support, be your pillar. So yeah, I believe that our school really needs that homeschool coordinator. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much.
Sorry.
Kim, and I apologize, Ruschel or Ruchel? Ruschel. Ms. Rochelle.
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Ruschel, and I am a parent of children at Pine Hills Elementary. I wanted to inform you that the homeschool coordinator position at Pine Hills is one of immeasurable value. The coordinator takes an active part in all aspects of the school. The individual fulfills a variety of roles and provides support to so many that it would be very easy for things to fall apart without the presence of the HSC. The HSC is so seamlessly intertwined in all aspects of Pine Hills that most parents probably wouldn't even know that he or she, who it is or what they do, or how the absence would impact the families, but the children would know. For some students, the HSC assumes the role of a mentor, disciplinarian, friend, parental figure, safe haven, or maybe even just the voice of wisdom. He or she is not an abstract presence, but a physical one as well. Every morning and afternoon, the HSC is present, speaking and welcoming children and families to our community, or trying to resolve any issues that may be affecting the members. The recommendation to transfer the homeschool coordinator imminently has left our entire community feeling as if
Ms. Rochelle, we're into the crossing the line about personnel, specific personnel and personnel decisions. I'm really sorry. Again, I'm going to offer you the same thing I offered the last speaker. There's particulars that you want to present to the superintendent about the current homeschool coordinator. You're free to do that, but to have it done in a public forum is just not appropriate.
I'm sorry, I was trying to speak on the position of what this position does.
I know, but now we're talking about transferring. I'm just suggesting that there's been a lot that's said, and it's been wonderful to hear, and I appreciate it. But when we cross the line, maybe you want to provide it to the person who has that daily responsibility for making those decisions.
Okay. To remove a homeschool coordinator in general, I don't know if I can say this. If not, I just want to say that a homeschool coordinator has the ability to offer emotional, social, and well-being to countless students and families. And to remove one from any school, I think, would be detrimental and leave a gaping hole that would destroy important scaffolding that they have helped create. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Manning, Lauren Manning.
Good evening. I'm a parent of an Arbor Hill Elementary School child, and I'm here specifically to discuss the middle school options. First, I really found myself perturbed that I found out through a Times Union article. I have lived across the street from Arbor Hill Middle School for 8 years. My 20-year-old son went through Arbor Hill Middle School. I know a few members of the board. I consider myself in the know. And I don't feel that anybody asked our community. When the school district wants to meet goals for funding requirements for the state, I've literally had people knock on my door. And to make such a decision about our community without including us in a meaningful way, and I don't mean the regular players who are always at these tables. I mean the parents, the poor parents, the working parents who consider Arbor Hill Elementary a community resource. And what one of the options, particularly the one of moving it to North Albany, is doing is literally taking the only elementary school in our whole community, in all of Arbor Hill, out of Arbor Hill. And I think most parents would find that unacceptable. Again, I just found out about this 2 days ago. I have spoke to at least 50 parents, one school board member, several activists in the area. A few knew about them. One mentioned to me that one of their colleagues did some of the community engagement, which was targeted in the South End, but nothing in Arbor Hill. Every parent I spoke to told me they didn't know about it. I shared the article with them. They were just as shocked. They all seemed opposed against the option of moving the only elementary school in Arbor Hill to North Albany. Some were, okay with the idea of moving it to Lark Street. Others thought it was a dangerous area for elementary schools. Most of these parents don't have cars. Most of these children walk. You're asking them to walk past Swan Street, a known drug block. You're asking them to give up their playground facilities and use the community space, which is usually older kids, not K through 5. And again, I guess the thing that was all common between us parents was that we don't feel engaged. We don't feel that you guys are treating us as partners in this decision making, and we're not sure you understand literally like the life-altering effect removing the only elementary school out of Arbor Hill would have on our community. It's connected to Whitney Young, which provides free health care, free dental care. It has food pantry services. I can go on, and I just think that before you guys make such a decision that there really needs to be some more community outreach and talking to parents of Arbor Hill specifically. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Branson Stanfield?
Hello. How you doing, board?
Very well, sir. Welcome.
Now, I'm not a man that sits down and talk to people. I like to stand up and talk to people. I have 2 kids at Pine Hills, Lee and Bella. Lee and Bella, come here. Sir? Okay, they shy. I'm not. Okay. Now, we're losing a homeschool coordinator. Bad move. Bad move. Okay, we need teachers' aides. We need teachers' aides. Why would we bring a homeschool coordinator in? Why would we lose a homeschool coordinator when we need teacher aides? And this guy has been there.
Sir.
Yes.
As I had explained to everyone who had spoken before, if you want to speak particularly about the things that you appreciate and that the,
I
that the
understand.
staff does well,
I understand.
the superintendent or one of
Okay.
our assistants will meet with you right now to talk, but publicly recorded, we can't talk about particular personnel.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
we really do not need an administrator at Pine Hills. We have a homeschool coordinator there that's doing a fantastic job.
Sir, please, I'll have one of the assistants talk to you specifically about
God.
the employee. But as I
Okay.
read before,
So
there's
we
laws, we
can't
cannot
say
talk
certain
about
things.
particular
Okay.
personnel or students in a public recorded forum.
Okay. All right, so I can't say we don't need another administrator.
That you can say because there's no other administrator there. That's just a proposal that apparently is that you are all speaking to not wanting.
I've seen this before. We have a lack of men of color that are positive in this district. We have a strong lack of men of positive in this district. And they're about to remove one from us.
Sir, I'm really sorry, but can I have the assistant superintendent for elementary talk to you right?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful.
Because
So
this is-
Dr. Wilson Turner is going to come talk to you, and you can feel and you can feel comfortable talking about details and particulars now that it's not in public. Thank you so much for availing yourself of that. Ms. Lee? Good evening. I just need you to talk into the mic because it is recorded, sorry.
I would like to begin by saying I do work for a large corporation, and I have been through many reorganizations where positions have been eliminated and new positions created or outsourced, and many functions and responsibilities get lost during the transition. I can only assume that the board has taken into consideration all that our homeschool coordinator does: the lunch mentoring, the basketball coaching, coordinating after-school activities, the meet and greet daily. There are way too many things to list. What I would like to know and hear is that all the homeschool coordinators' responsibilities will continue after the restructure has taken place, that the transformation will be seamless to the students and family, that we will still have a go-to person at Pine Hills when we are looking for activities for our kids to do in the community, or when our children have had a bad day and there is someone for them to listen to. In my opinion, what the board should be doing is figuring out how we can have both, rather than eliminating the position that reaches out to the community other than fulfilling obligations within the school. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lee. So at this time, with the consent of the board, since we have outside people here to present, I'm going to move item 8 to a discussion and potential action item from, or is it item 9? It's actually item 9 up now to take place now at the conclusion of public comment. So for those who are following along on the computers or on hard copies, again, with the consent of the board, so long as there's no opposition, we will move for discussion and potential action item number 9 so that we can relieve our outside people of sitting through the rest of the meeting. So Carl Stewart, our district counsel, Jeff Honeywell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Stewart and I are pleased to present to the board tonight for its consideration and adoption a project labor agreement. And I'm going to briefly describe what that is for purposes of the audience that may not be familiar with it. Mr. Stewart's been more deeply involved in the actual negotiations in terms of some of the terms, so I'm going to turn it over to him for some of that. Essentially, a project labor agreement is like any other union agreement. It's an agreement between, in this case, Turner Construction as the construction manager for the district on the project, and all of the various contractor unions. We typically will say trades out there: electricians, plumbers, laborers, carpenters, etc. And why it's called a project labor agreement is it's a collective bargaining agreement that is unique to the project. And the project in this case is the Albany High School current renovation project, which is about to kick off very, very soon. Project labor agreements are permitted under the law when there has been a study to demonstrate that adopting a project labor agreement will result in savings. That study has been conducted. Carl will talk about some of the areas of those savings. Project labor agreements are why the trades or the unions like them, is that gives them a guaranteed percentage of the workforce will be union members of the various trades. And as probably most, I know all of you are aware, and most of the public is aware, Albany is a union town, and a lot of the residents who work on construction projects are members of unions. When you have a project labor agreement, the other significant advantage to the owner, which is the school district, under the current law, it also allows a school district to proceed on the bidding of a project without going through what is known as the WICS law. But the short summary of that is, typically under a public construction project, there's at least 4 separate contracts that have to be let out: electricians, plumbers, HVAC, and general contractor, essentially. But if you have a project labor agreement, you do not have to do separate contracts. You can actually bid out to one specific, one package of work, I guess, Carl. And that's not what we intend to do here in the district in the current phase that's heading out, but it's something that I believe Carl Stewart on Turner Construction and C.S. Arch, the architect, are considering for the future. The other significant benefit to the owner with a project labor agreement is labor peace. And by that I mean, if any of the trades in the area are having difficulties with their contractors that they have agreements with, that will not and cannot spill over to the Albany High School project. There would be no strikes, there would be no picketing or anything of that nature. So that's what I mean by labor peace. There are a lot of elements to a project labor agreement, but the 3 that Mr. Stewart and I have focused on for the board have been in the area of encouraging MWBE participation, encouraging minority and women labor participation, and most significantly from the board's direction has been encouraging and maximizing the opportunity for City of Albany residents, be it minority or not, but Albany residents actually obtaining work on this project. So with that said, I will turn it over to Carl for some of his comments.
So what I will do first is just talk to you about the cost savings so you can understand. The trade unions have collective bargaining agreements, and in other words, those are rules of how you work and engage and how individuals get paid. And in project labor agreements, the unions give certain concessions back for the project labor agreement. So some of the cost savings that were done in the study here add up to actually a figure of just about $1 million. If all of these things are put into place, that there could be a cost saving. So we've met the requirements of the law and that there's a cost saving. So I'm going to discuss a few. First of all, it allows us flexible starting times, because some of the collective bargaining agreements say you have to start at a particular time, but we all know when school is in session, if we have to do things off hours and work and staggered times based around the school's activities, we need that flexibility, so the PLA does that for us without a cost associated with it. And there's also certain contributions that trade unions have that go into a fund for promotion within the unions and what they do on their side. So that contribution is waived under the PLA, so there's cost savings there. There's a collective bargaining units have a standard set of ratios of apprentices. Our PLA that's proposed for consideration here has a higher percentage. It's 33% to journeymen, so that's a positive, and that actually saves cost on the project. We're going to have to do a lot of work in the high school on a second shift and holidays and some of those. So what the PLA does is provide relief of some of the differential that happens. So that's, again, a concession the unions gave back for the project labor, so there's cost savings there. And a big component as well is there's an understanding about off-site fabrication of certain materials and equipment so that it can help us expedite schedule and reduce cost of doing it on site, and it makes the process easier. So those are some examples of some of the concessions that were given under the project labor agreement that get the cost savings that's required. So there's also other benefits, and that were very important to the team here with respect to a PLA, and the other enhancements that are in the one for consideration here are, I'll go through a couple. The first being what we call an enhanced tag-along provision, and that enhanced tag-along provision is for minority and women-owned businesses that allows for you to bring your own employees at a ratio into the number of union employees. So we've gotten an enhancement for that under the collective bargaining agreement for our PLA, so that's a number one. We were able to negotiate for consideration a special committee to review the implementation and workforce initiatives. So as the project progresses, we're going to set up a special committee that watches the oversight of how some of these things I'm talking about tonight are implemented, and that's a new feature. There are a lot more direct entry opportunities into the apprenticeship programs for qualified referrals, and that's huge. That's workforce development. So when the district can, through the community outreach, identifies qualified candidates, we have a select number that can go directly into the apprenticeship program, and that's very big. We also have an agreement where any of the referrals that the district provides of qualified candidates go directly to the pre-apprenticeship program, so the classes that get prepared for the apprenticeship. So that's a first as well, and that's positive. We were able to negotiate goals of 50% of all apprentices would be residents of the city boundaries of the Albany City School District. So that would be an enhancement for us. Those are just some of the enhancements to the PLA. We also put into the PLA the goals that we talked about for minority and women-owned business enterprise at 15% goals, based on a study that we did earlier in the year on capacity within the market here. And we also put in the goal of the 10% on women and minority in the trades to be able to work on the project, and those goals will be inserted into this PLA should it be adopted as well. So those, in addition to some of the things that Mr. Honeywell talked about, are the negotiated provisions that we've gotten into a potential project labor agreement should the board decide to move forward with it.
So, Mr. Honeywell, what I thought I would do now is have Ms. Smith just report out, following what Mr. Stewart said, with regard to another component that, while it's not part of the PLA, is part of what the board has been working on as part of workforce development, of which PLA is obviously a piece. Ms. Smith?
Great, thank you. First of all, thank you, gentlemen. We've been working quite closely for several months on this PLA. I do want to make reference to an RFP that we put out in, I think, November, December, for a community advocate manager whose responsibility would be to go out and communicate with folks who are interested in getting into the trades, skilled or not skilled, minority firms and women-owned firms or not. We wanted to make sure that we put boots on the ground, if you will, to ensure that we could attract folks from Albany primarily to get into or to take these employment opportunities. Unfortunately, at this time tonight, we're not finished with negotiating the contract. We are very close and expect to announce that individual, who is an Albany native, who will take on this role shortly after approval at our next board meeting. And so that individual will be going out talking to a variety of organizations, individuals, making sure that you have the knowledge of this employment opportunity and participation in the rebuilding of Albany High, and also that you have a clear understanding of some of the pathways, as was discussed here tonight, pre-apprenticeship programs, apprenticeship programs. Perhaps you've already have skills in the area and could go right into an apprenticeship, or perhaps you're already a journey worker. We want you. And so we will be making sure that you have a way to reach, to apply and to reach the community advocate who will assist you. Thank you.
So I just want to follow up before I go to you, Mr. Honeywell, again, just while the iron is hot, and to, on behalf of the board, to thank Ms. Smith for not just being chair of the Facilities Committee, but for spearheading and for seeing come to life the board's commitment to workforce development, which is the process of getting city residents, especially people of color, into the workforce, not just for this project, but for the future. And Vicki has taken a huge leadership role in it and has worked tirelessly for many, many months to see this happen. And we could not have probably done this without her taking this on And so we believe the structures are in place, the transparency will be there, and it will be monitored along the way as we go through this process of seeing workforce actually developed among us in our city for our city folks. So thank you, Vicki, on behalf of the board.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Mr. Stewart, for your work, and Mr. Honeywell. And now I'll turn it back to you.
Well, just a couple of comments, although you stole one of them. We were also going to thank actually the entire board, but certainly Vicki has been a leader on this. You heard me mention in the description that there are goals, for example, 15% for NWBE, 10% for labor participation. I just want to make clear to the public, I know the board knows, we can't legally have requirements under the law. They have to be negotiated as goals. And what Mr. Stewart and I are particularly pleased with in this agreement, first of all, I know the public's just hearing about it tonight, but it actually has been going on for months as a collective bargaining process. And each and every time Mr. Stewart and I came back to the board with a report in executive session, the board consistently challenged us to go back and get more. So this is, Mr. Stewart does a lot of PLAs. I do several. I was certainly involved in the last one in Albany back in 2003. This is the strongest PLA that I think we have seen that addresses the goal of maximizing getting your residents into union jobs, hopefully on this project, but even if not, getting them into the union and getting them trained means they're available for future projects for the rest of their life. So it is the strongest PLA that I have seen, I think maybe Mr. Stewart has seen, in that kind of direct entry for the citizens of Albany. So thank you.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, it is my understanding that right now what I'm going to ask for, a motion to approve, is basically to authorize on our behalf, Turner Construction and Mr. Stewart, to negotiate a PLA in a sense, and based on what we've talked about, and come back to us. Is that correct, Mr. Honeywell? Or help me articulate the language better. Thank you.
The board has the latest, what I'm calling the final draft that was sent to you on January 11th. So we're actually asking the board to approve the PLA that I forwarded on January 11th, authorize Carl Stewart to execute that on behalf of Turner Construction as your construction manager, with the only caveat being subject to perhaps some potential minor editorial changes that we might work out with the trades, but no substantive changes.
So do I need to repeat that, or is that sufficient, District Council, for me to say, I entertain a motion now based on what Mr. Honeywell just articulated?
I have complete confidence in Ms. Tibbetts that she got all that down, so yes.
So, may I get a motion? Ms. Smith, seconded by Ms. Roach, all in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very, very much, and I'm sure you'll report back, as will we, when it is finalized. Thank you so much. So we're up to routine, excuse me. Oh, yes, yes, I apologize. Rich, so again, more outside people. We're going to do the Albany High update, just giving you some information on the construction and planning process. Mr. Hogan, join him. Mr. Peckham, thank you so much.
Just turn it over to me. We wanted to give you an update, a periodic update, just on where we're at with the whole high school planning and construction process. So a lot of these slides are going to be very similar, the same we've seen before, but just as refreshing information. First thing is just the overall schedule. Phase 1 classroom addition, which I'll talk about in a little more detail, is scheduled for occupancy starting in the fall of 2019, giving this high school much needed relief in available classroom space. The Phase 2, which is the art and music classroom addition and partial classroom building renovation with the media center and the new main entry, that will start construction in the summer of 2019 with partial occupancy in 2020 and full completion in 2021. Phase 3, which is the gymnasium and athletics renovation, will have full occupancy in the fall of 2023. And the final fourth phase of the courtyard infill and the classroom building renovation is occupancy at the outside of 2025. Phase 1 schedule. This is the first time that you will see some very specific dates now associated with some of the tasks going forward with the project. We started in the fall removing the oil tanks. We were hoping they would have been all removed in the fall, but as the board's aware, we ran into some contaminated soils, and the process of getting that removed is taking longer than if we hadn't found them, but it's indicative of one of the reasons why we wanted to start in the fall, so by the time we start construction on the addition, we have that issue behind us. So we're pleased to announce that we are finalizing the documents for Phase 1 to be ready to go to bid. Current date is to release those for contractor availability a week from tomorrow. So contractors will be able to start putting their bids together for the project. The bid date when we'll receive those bids is March 1st, and then we will be asking the board for approval of contracts at the board meeting on March 15th, with the goal of the week that school is closed for April break, with the contractors coming in and starting to put up the construction fencing and really starting to set up that area for the first phase of construction. Just as some kind of overall where things will be going and what you'll be seeing the rest of this year as construction progresses. They'll be starting construction, as I said, in April. They'll be starting excavation for the foundations, taking out some soil, bringing in structural fill. During the summer, we'll be seeing foundations going in. And really the stage you'll see that addition at around the end of this year is the structural steel will be up and it'll really start to be looking like a building at that point in time. So just kind of highlighting overall, I think everybody's familiar now with the overall layout of the building. The existing building consists of the gymnasium building, the auditorium building, and the classroom building. The Phase 1, which is going to be going under construction, is the new classroom wing, plus an area that we're starting here that will provide the new heating and cooling plant for the building. And the classroom addition will be 3 floors. There's a number of temporary exits that we need to create to keep it safe for the students exiting the building while things are under construction. So we're creating some temporary exits off the gym and off the pool lobby area to make that safe and secure during construction. Just as a general overview of the classroom addition, there'll be one small learning community on each floor of the classroom addition. So ultimately, when it's finished, there'll be 3 small learning communities in the addition, and then 2 plus a lot of the core spaces in the existing building. So you can see just here we have science classrooms, general classrooms, administration, circulation, and support spaces for each small learning community. This is just kind of an axonometric of the classroom addition off the back towards the rear athletic fields, and then the central plant addition for all of the mechanical work at the front of the building. And then this is a rendering that we put together of what the building will look like from the athletic fields. So this is if you're in the lower bowl field, kind of looking up at the building as it progresses across the construction. So then the Phase 2 schedule, as we've been finishing documents on Phase 1, we've been moving into Phase 2. We've had a series of detailed programming meetings with staff for the spaces in Phase 2, a lot around the art spaces, the music spaces, the library and media center, the auditorium. So we'll be finishing what's called schematic design in February, and then moving into design development. And you can see the dates on the screen with a plan to submit to State Ed this fall of 18. So we're in the same cycle. We'll be about the same time next year putting Phase 2 out to bid. So to maximize the construction seasons, we'll be starting construction on Phase 2 while Phase 1 construction is finishing. Just quickly, the general scope of the Phase 2 work is renovations underneath the auditorium for support spaces for the auditorium, and then the renovation of the 1/3 of the first floor of the existing building for CTE spaces, namely building trades and automotive are going into that part of the building. On the first floor, we will now have the new main entrance, the Library Media Center, which will be towards the front of the building on Washington Avenue, and then the art and music classroom addition, renovations of the auditorium, cosmetology, and other spaces in the second floor. And then the third floor is largely the art classroom addition, and then some general classrooms for foreign language on the space over top of the Library Media Center. Again, this is another axonometric looking at what's being added in this phase, and it's largely the art and music classroom addition, and then the new main entrance and the connection back to the existing building. Phase 3 then gets into the renovation of the athletic wing and making this connection, north-south connection from the front of the building to the back to connect the main circulation of the building together. Similarly, on the second floor is the renovation of the gymnasium space, creation of other space in that area. And then at the end of the third phase, that's when we get the additional the walking track around the gymnasium, and the gymnasium renovations will be completed. The fourth and final phase is when we complete the renovations of the rest of the building, infill the courtyard space, and create that central dining area, cafeteria, study hall area in that part of the building on the first floor. And then the second floor becomes a fourth small learning community, and the third floor becomes the fifth and final small learning community. Throughout this whole process, we've been working very closely with Karen Bechtel on programming and interfacing with the teachers, and Jody, your new selected principal for the high school, has been very much involved with a lot of the planning processes as we've gone forward. And this is just an axonometric of what the building will be when it's all complete with the central courtyard filled in. You can see all the additions incorporated into that. So, and then just as far as the site work goes, there'll be a drive all the way around the building, but there'll be a gate there so that it can either be open when it needs to be, or emergency access can get through, creating additional parking here, creating a new parking lot off of Washington Avenue, because the existing Washington Avenue lot is where the art and music addition is going to be, so we'll still have parking at the front of the building for the main entrance. And so we kind of laid out where we're going with the construction as that goes forward in phase 1 and planning in phase 2. Just some other next steps in the design process. We've selected proposed colors and finishes for the interior of the building. We've reviewed that with Jody and Karen and other high school staff. Our next step with that will be to bring that to the facilities committee for review at a future meeting. As I mentioned, we're going to be finalizing the schematic design for phase 2. We continue to refine the phasing and how this all gets put together with Carl and his people to make sure that we're safe, secure, and still educating the students while all this is going on. And then finally, we're starting to begin the more detailed programming discussions with the affected spaces in phases 3 and 4. And with that, questions or comments?
Thank you so much, Mr. Peckham. That was a terrific presentation.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. It's very exciting, even if I don't sound like that in my voice. Very exciting. It's just cold. Ms. Roach.
Well, I'm excited to see this come to fruition and start getting fleshed out. There's just so many details here. Can you just talk maybe a little more about what's going to go on with the timeline? I guess that's not a very specific. You're right. That's not a very specific question. I'm just curious because it seems like the final date of fall 2025 is sort of more than the 7 years out that we were originally talking about, but then the fall 2019 for phase one is, if I remember correctly, right around the original target date. I think we were talking about 7 years from 2016, right?
Well, it's what's driving the schedule is that the final phase for maximizing the aid from the state cannot start until 5 years after phase one starts construction. So we're starting construction on phase 4 in 2023, and then it just depends. We may be able to shorten that a year. It's just once we get into the details with Turner Construction on how long they think it's going to take and be able to build that. Because in that point in time, we're into renovation, so we may not be able to work on that whole area all at once. We may have to renovate part of and then move students around to be able to do that.
Excellent. So what I'm hearing is the reason for the additional time is because we're trying to do this in the most financially efficient way possible.
Correct.
Thanks.
Ms. Lang?
You were talking about schematics. Does that include furniture? When does that happen?
Furniture is another thing I didn't mention that we are working with the school district on as far as what type of furniture you want in the new classrooms. And we are actually going to do a couple pilot rooms because the furniture that's been used for 50 years may not be the type of furniture they want for 21st century education. So we are going to get a couple classrooms of different types of furniture than what they're currently using for them to try out later this semester and then probably in the fall before we make a decision on which furniture to purchase. So around this time next year, we'll be making final decisions on what furniture will be going into the additions. Does that answer your question?
Dr. Chator? Ms. Wilson? Good evening. Am I on? It's not.
Good evening, thank you. So I'm glad that you underlined your concern for the safety and security elements, so I appreciate that. Was there any projections or any kind of like anticipation of what could be issues concerning the students when you undergo construction?
I think it's just a matter of securing the construction area, and that's why there's requirements to put fencing up with lock gates. There's very specific state education department requirements on how we have to maintain the site relative to making sure there's no connection between contractors and the students, and just education is going to be the key thing to work with the faculty and students as far as when things change, when traffic patterns change, to make sure everybody knows about that ahead of times. As I've told many people, we find that schools can deal with just about anything as long as they know in advance and plan on it. Don't tell them on Friday that the main entrance is going to be closed on Monday, because that will not work well. So that's what working with Carl's key person, Scott DePhillips, on all the work here. We've been working on how we maintain that and communicate with the school on the changes.
Ms. Smith?
Really no questions at all. I was just sort of chuckling here to myself, thinking that, you know, with all this work around the PLA, you've sort of empowered the board now. I feel as if I'm ready to take on a new career in construction. And was going to tell you about some flooring that I think you should check out. But, well, it actually is true. That's not a joke. We'll talk about it. But I just want to thank you all again for all the work you're doing. And it just, every time you come to the table, we can start to see this project, you know, take shape. So thank you.
Ms. Savage?
As you've started dealing with the program questions around phase 2, I'm going to ask you the question I asked around phase 1, which is, were there any requests that were made as you're trying to finalize the program that you're not going to be able to accommodate in the ultimate design of phase 2?
I guess the only one that comes to mind was an initial request for being able to have a music band room that was capable of holding the entire band. And when we worked with them, we said, well, we can do that. They wanted a band room, an orchestra room, and a choral room. And to get a band room big enough and a choral room big enough to hold the whole band or the whole chorus all at once, we had to sacrifice one of them. So we had a preliminary plan that did that. And then when we went back and did another round of programming, they realized that the ability to schedule the whole band all in one period was going to be almost impossible. So they were giving up a room for something that may be ideal but may not be practical. So we're back to 3 main rooms for the music suite. So I think that in the end, they're getting what initially they asked for, yes.
So when they need to do a full band rehearsal, that happens on the stage?
On the stage, yes.
Ms. Roach, anything else?
No, I understand. Thank you.
Ms. Lang? Ms. Wilson?
Kind of along the lines of furniture and flooring, I was thinking about, to Jen's point, to Ms. Lang's point, the stand and deliver sort of layout, and I'm pretty sure you might have done that maybe for like just a placeholder to illustrate these are the classrooms, but just thinking about other pedagogies, other styles for furniture. In addition to that, I was looking to the layout of the cafeteria. It appears to hold 634. So I don't know if that was going to inform the way the lunch shifts would work and things of that nature. So that was my last question.
Yeah, that cafeteria is ultimately in phase 4, so we haven't gotten into a lot of the details there, but the plan was that they would probably, as the school increases enrollment, probably have to go to 4 or 5 lunch shifts to be able to accommodate all the students. Because our understanding is that during lunch, they're either in the cafeteria, but some of them also go to the library during lunch and gives them flexibility of where they're at that period.
Ms. Smith? Ms. Savage?
So I'm going to talk about toilets now. Everybody who wants to hear about toilets can stay. Those who don't want to hear about toilets can leave. It's mostly a phase 2 question, but there's also parts of it that are an element of phase 1. Phase 2 includes the auditorium, and so I'm interested, because that's such a public space and such a heavily utilized public space, and it is a space where everyone leaves the auditorium at once and then goes back in at once, whether you've thought about the sort of potty parity questions around having more women's rooms than men's stations, which is something that's been happening in the building codes internationally, I know for sure. And also, I noticed that even in phase 1, I didn't see gender-neutral bathrooms immediately adjacent to the boys and girls rooms. I also didn't see potty parity issues expressed in the phase 1. They look like they're 1-to-1 men to women, which I imagine is logical in a high school because you don't have everybody leaving and going to the restroom at once as you do in the auditorium. So those are my topics, potty parity around the auditorium in particular, and gender-neutral bathrooms in the learning communities.
I'll just see if I can. There are toilet rooms here that are available for during the auditorium. The main ones for the auditorium are here, but during main events, we're assuming that they'll leave this corridor open so people can go back there also. And there's also, because now we connect very easily to the gymnasium wing, that you can have the toilet rooms there for the gym, because you probably won't have a major event in the gym and the auditorium at the same time. So when we're designing schools, we try to provide sufficient fixtures for events, but disperse them a little bit, because the event is not the most common use, and to invest that much just around the auditorium doesn't make sense for that limited number of times when you use it. But we feel we have sufficient toilets in multiple locations close to both the gymnasium and the auditorium where you'll have major events to accommodate the requirements of the school and of the meeting. First off, we had to meet the building code and then deal with the actual functionality of the school. So, and then as far as your gender neutral, the intention is that at each, like here, there's the main toilet rooms, but then there's 2 individual toilet rooms, which those can be designated as gender neutral toilet rooms in those locations.
So, because I had seen those on the diagram and they weren't labeled, and I was somewhat concerned that those were faculty restrooms and not for student use.
The discussions we've had with the school is that one of them will probably be faculty, or they may choose to have them be gender neutral and faculty.
Okay.
Anybody else? Ms. Lang.
I was wondering about time. It's a substantially larger facility. If you have, what has the time been for schedules for the music room going all the way to media center, for example, for a student, or how has that kind of worked out?
The key we tried to organize is to very straight, distinct circulation so you can get from one place to the other. So, for instance, that's why we have this long connecting spine all the way from the front to the back. And also, we made this very straight connecting spine along this side. Before the vote, this connection was not as strong as it was, and then as we developed the plans, we realized that was an important thing. So, a student going, if they're in one of the academies here, if they want to get to the art and music or the auditorium, they'll just come down this way and then over to the auditorium or over to the media center. So you have a very clear circulation there. Similarly, students that are here can go this way. It should be the rare case that a student here is going to classes over here, because that's a separate small learning community. And unlike now, where all the science classrooms are in one learning community, those have all been dispersed into each small learning community for those areas. So I think overall we've tried to organize it clear, easy paths to get from one point to the other so this travel time should not be an issue.
So thank you, Mr. Peckham. Okay, this is the last question. I think we're running out of time. Everybody's got their hands up. Okay, this is, I'm going to go to Dr. Chitour as an ask one, and then I'll come back to you.
Quick question. The HVAC system is a problem with the current building, and I know that the music room is kind of really cold right now. So after this phase 1 is done, would that fix it, or would it be phase 2 when that gets fixed?
It's most likely going to be phase 2 when that's fixed, as far as the music room temperature when we build the new music rooms.
But would there be any temporary solution that could be fixed in phase 1 so that it's not
We'll have,
freezing?
I will talk, you mean in particular the music room?
Yeah.
I will talk with Brian Dengler and see what the issue really is and see if we can't do something in earlier to take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Roach.
I just wanted to thank Ms. Savage for bringing up her concerns about the sanitation and echo her concerns that we have, if building codes are switching toward having more facilities for women than men, that's something that we should consider. But definitely the gender neutrality. I think we have a great opportunity because of the fact that we are building a new building to make sure that our facilities are really welcoming to all students regardless of how they identify. And so just hearing, well, we might be able to, we don't know, this single stall might be faculty, but it could be gender neutral. I think I'd like to see, to the extent that that's possible, I'd like to see that, those types of restrooms available throughout the school.
Ms. Wilson. So to end, I was just going to say that, it was a number of years ago, back when Dr. Wilson Turner was the principal at the high school, that we actually began creating gender-neutral facilities for students and making sure that that was something taken care of. So it's not new, and I'm sure that you'll be providing it independent and not making it so that it has to be shared with faculty, because it's early enough and it's just continuing the tradition that was started a number of years ago. Thank you so very much. 2009 seemed forever ago when we first started down this path, and some of our board members will have their students there. 2019, and some board members will actually have their children there for the inaugural new classroom building, so that will be nice. So thank you so very much. We're up to routine consent. May I get a motion to adopt routine consent? Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Smith. Any set-asides? Ms. Savage.
I need to set aside J, which is the CDTA contract.
Okay. Any other set-asides?
May I get a motion to adopt routine consent except for J, the CDTA contract? Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Smith. All those in favor? That is unanimous. May I get a motion to accept J, the CDTA contract? Dr. Chator, seconded by Ms. Wilson. Any discussion?
So I had sent this question earlier, but we didn't actually get to see this contract until late yesterday, so I know there wasn't a lot of time. But the contract refers to passes, that we would get a 10% discount on passes for all staff and for bus ineligible students. And my question is, the CDTA system has gone away from passes, and they're now using Navigator. And when you look at their website, they no longer refer to passes. The Swiper Pass is no more. We have retired the Swiper Pass as of December 31st, and the last ones will be out of circulation on March 31st. So I'm trying to understand exactly what this benefit is that our non-bus eligible students and our staff are entitled to. And as part of that question, I wanted to ask a little bit more about how we have communicated that benefit availability to students and staff, because I get the sense that the people I know who've tried to access it have had trouble accessing it. They've called our district transportation and found that unsatisfactory. They've called CDTA and found that unsatisfactory. They haven't been able to really access that. And I know bus ineligible students who've done that, and I don't remember ever seeing any communication going out to either students or to our staff, particularly our APSU staff who live predominantly in the city. I would think that a 10% reduction in their bus fare would be a rather considerable benefit for them, and I'd like to know more about what that really looks like in this new contract, how that affects our existing CDTA contracts, which all show the 10% off of the Swiper passes, which don't exist anymore, and what we're doing to make sure that the benefit actually exists in a real way for our staff and our students.
As you know, the swipers are being replaced with something, and we'll have to work with them to whatever that something is, that there's similar discounts. This contract is very short term. It ends on June 30th. But we can work with communications to first clarify with CDTA when they convert the systems that this doesn't get lost. And second, I'll work with the communications department to make it better known. I do know when we have individual conversations with parents, especially parents that their students don't qualify, when we suggest several possible solutions, walking with other kids. Is there a neighbor that walks? One of the last resorts is, you can always, on your own expense, get a CDTA if you can do that. That's when we can throw in and have communicated in the past in specific cases that there is additional discount eligible. So we can do all of those things and look to promote it better, but we'll have to get clarification on, this is kind of standard language that we've had in previous contracts, and it's only for a few months.
I understand. Yeah, it does seem like it's the consistent language. They did remove the word swiper. When you compare them side by side, they pulled the word swiper out, so it's clear that somebody realized that something was happening here. But when you look at the CDTA website, the new thing is called Navigator, and it doesn't refer to passes in any way, shape, or form. So I'm personally not going to vote in favor of this contract because I don't think it's clear what the benefit is to the district, and I can't in good conscience vote for a contract that I think is vague. I imagine that there are 6 votes, and it won't be a matter of my vote being the passing one, but I will not vote for a contract that is unclear to me what we are actually getting for our money.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion to adopt J? And that is, did you get that, Ms. Tibbetts? It is Ms. Roach, Dr. Chator, Ms. Lang, and myself. All those opposed? And that you have the other 3. And I will just add, even though that passed, is that I understand that this is may not be easy to answer at the board meeting, but even with the contract ending in June, it would behoove us to, even if it was a 1-month contract, if what we could do now is get clarity over what is provided, get clarity over what the discount is, and then just turn around quickly communication to people who even aren't looking to supplement for being
within the 1.5, but who maybe want to use it on weekends for families. It's a benefit to the district, so let's try to get clarity about what it is. And then once we have clarity, as soon as we're able, just communicate it out, whether it's through SNN or on the website or however you feel is the best way to communicate it. Yes, Ms. Savage? That would be, no, I'm saying yes. So thank you so much. So that concludes routine consent. And Ms. Savage, you are up for policy.
I was all focused on buses and I wasn't thinking about policy. Let me move my agenda here. Okay. So you have before you one policy we're going to talk about for discussion. For those of you in the audience may not know, we always put a policy up for discussion, one meeting, and then act on it in a future meeting. So for tonight, for discussion only, we have homebound instruction, 4327, and then for action, we have the 4 policies we discussed in the December 14th board meeting, which are the wellness policy, the transportation policy, the parent involvement policy, and notice of meetings. Homebound instruction is a new policy. We have not had this policy before. This is not homeschooled children. These are children who are homebound, usually for medical reasons. And so what you have before you is the NYSBA sample policy and then the red line versus that to what we're actually proposing, which is slightly different. All of this has been approved by legal counsel and has been approved by the good ladies and gentlemen of PPS who will be presenting to us shortly. That is homebound instruction. I think it's fairly straightforward. We provide education to our students who are homebound. In terms of the 4 that we discussed last time, I think we're all relatively well familiar with all of the red lines here. I did want to say again, because I think it's such an important thing that we should not discount it, that in the future, after we adopt 8400 transportation, we will no longer be providing door-to-door service for kindergartners. And I remind everyone that we did that very thoughtfully because our current kindergarten policy, which is door-to-door, is dramatically inequitable to our walkers. Our kindergarten walkers have to walk up to 1.49 miles. They don't get busing until they get to 1.5. But our bus kindergartners are getting door-to-door service instead of having to walk a half a mile to a bus stop. It seems entirely inequitable. And when we make that change, it allows us to create some freedom in the transportation budget, which allows us to make everyone's rides shorter without adding additional money into the transportation budget. So there's both an equity reason and a fiscal reason to do this, and that is the biggest change in any of the policies in front of you. The wellness policy is a lot of clarifying language, which we just discussed. Parent involvement is primarily a compliance document having to do with Title I parent involvement policies, and the notice of meeting says that if we are traveling, that we may video conference as board members, as long as we're in a public location. I'm open to any questions that people have.
Any questions on policy? I was going to say we can do them as a group. It's up to you. We've done them before as a group. Does that work for you? That's right. So normally, as I don't know if Ann was not on the mic, but so what we have done in the past is so long as we are going to be actually passing them and somebody doesn't want to actually abstain or vote against one of the policies that have come up now for action a second time. Sorry. Thank you, Andre. I don't know if I was talking away from the mic or drowning or just dying out with my voice, so thank you for increasing the volume. So if nobody has a problem with that, we'll do them as one group. So can I get a motion to approve the wellness policy, the transportation policy, the parent involvement policy, and the notice of meetings policy? Ms. Smith, seconded by Ms. Roach. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you again, Ms. Savage, to you and your committee for the thorough work you always do. We are up to PPS, Pupil Personnel Services. Welcome, all of you. I think your mic might not be on, Dr. Canton-Vale, so, or you're, because,
you got it?
ah,
So I am not actually presenting, but I would like to introduce the newly formed PPS team. I'm thrilled to have them up here. They are the terrific trio, I'll call them. Dr. Canzoni Ball, Director of PPS, Mike Panetta, Assistant Director of PPS, and Carla McDowell, PPS. And I'm just thrilled to have them sitting up here to present the PPS program review to all of you.
Good evening, Superintendent Adams, Board of Education members, as well as cabinet members. Thank you for having us here this evening to present our Pupil Personnel Services Program Review. If I could just start by saying I'm so proud to be sitting at this table with this team under Mrs. McKenna's leadership. We joke and we say it's the PPS family, but I feel like we've so quickly bonded and have gelled to become a team that really tackles a lot of big issues in this district. And again, I'm so proud to be a part of the City School District of Albany, specifically PPS. So thank you again for having us here tonight. To start, a little history and background of Pupil Personnel Services, which we affectionately call PPS. The department traditionally has served in the capacity of providing a variety of supports for students. Over the years, we've moved to a preventative model, and the role of PPS has shifted and grown, shifted focus. Our team works closely with everyone throughout the district. Specifically, we work very closely with the Department of Special Education, building and district leaders, outside agencies, community agencies, related service providers, and what we do is try to meet and assess the professional development needs of staff while supporting ongoing initiatives. Several of these include communicating a framework for the role of behavioral support teams within our buildings, coordinating monthly PPS department meetings to promote vertical and horizontal alignment, facilitating the hiring process for PPS staff vacancies, creating safe school professional development for principals and all dignity for all students ACT coordinators, collaborating with the grants office regarding My Brother's Keeper Challenge Grant, which is focused on reducing the code of conduct violations and restorative practices, increasing them through the district. Yeah, we're good, sorry. We collaborate with all district staff regarding the preventative strategies plan. We work closely with the independent monitor and the ombudsperson through the Office of the Attorney General to ensure compliance with the assurance of discontinuance. We support a consistent structure and implementation of the response to intervention behavior process. We partner closely with agencies like the Albany Police Department regarding crisis response and support the Handle with Care program. And we work to build capacity throughout the district to support trauma-informed schools, all of which I just mentioned you'll hear more about tonight. Got it, thanks. Tonight's presentation includes a program overview, a goal update for 2016-17, strengths and challenges, discussion, our areas of focus, scope of work for years to come, as well as budget recommendations. So really the PPS department work can be categorized into 4 major areas that you see up on the slide. Registration and records includes the process of central registration, how we take families into the City School District of Albany. We oversee open enrollment, student working papers, all records requests, as well as subpoenas flow through our office. In terms of federal and state mandates and reporting, we are responsible for the implementation and tracking of the Code of Conduct, the assurance of continuance, the superintendent hearing process, as well as the pre-superintendent hearing conferences, which Carla is really the backbone of, and we appreciate her work in that area. The Dignity for All Students Act, or DASA, Violent and Disruptive Incident Reporting, VADER, which you've seen a lot of in our program profile. Child Protective Services reporting, the McKinney-Vento Act, which supports our students and families experiencing homelessness, district-wide attendance. Then we move into program oversight, homeschooling, home instruction,
positive behavioral interventions and supports, or PBIS, therapeutic crisis intervention for schools, TCIS, response to intervention on the behavior side, and we'll talk more about how we're beginning to merge the behavior and the academics in response to intervention, the preventative strategies plan, which is an outcome of the assurance of discontinuance, character education, evening tutorial program, and the Trauma-Informed Schools initiative that we just embarked on, we're very excited about. Under supervision and evaluation, we have direct responsibility for district-wide attendance teachers, behavior specialists, school counselors, school psychologists, and social workers. Now I'll turn it over to Carla for a discussion of our 2016-17 goal progress. Sorry.
Thank you. Hello. I get to talk to you about the update of last year's goals, as well as the work that we've done in the department and some of the metrics associated with that work of our outcomes. So the department has provided coordination for a variety of preventative strategies, including culturally responsive education, where approximately 20 district staff participated in a 4-day training through New York University's Steinhardt Institute. We also supported a social academic intervention group, or SAG committee, to build the district-wide SAG curriculum resources to implement as a Tier 2 strategy. Schools began engaging in the work to promote mindfulness strategies like the one that you all experienced earlier tonight, and staff members also participated in a 3-day restorative practice training. Each year, the department reviews policies pertaining to our work, and we make recommendations to the policy committee for recommendations, as you did tonight. Thank you. And the model of behavioral support teams in each building is fairly new now, and our department is continuing to refine the roles of the behavioral specialists, social workers, psychologists, and school counselors. As Carrie stated just a moment ago, we are moving away from a framework that isolates academics from behaviors, and we're looking at the whole child. Through the My Brother's Keeper Challenge grant, the department was able to expand our collaboration with several community partners, including the New York State Defenders and the Albany Peace Project. We were also able to expand outreach to local colleges and universities to provide internships to aspiring school social workers and psychologists, and many of those contracts came through the board, if you remember also. I think this slide represents a lot of our challenges that we work on every day. And some of our highlighted areas of focus here also have some great results, as well as continuing challenges. There was an increase in a number of incidents that were reported to New York State under the category of violent and disruptive incidents, or VADERS. And again, this is a slide that's comparing the 2015-16 school year to the 2016-17 school year, so between those 2 years. There was a decrease in referrals that required administrative response. Our homeless population did have a slight increase. New entrants to the district increased by 3.4% as compared to the previous year. Mobility continues to have a serious impact, as only 20% of our current 11th graders were continuously enrolled. To be continuously enrolled, a student has been enrolled at least 90% of the year cumulatively in our district for every year that the student was enrolled in the district. So just so you have an idea of that definition. With the high level of mobility, there are missed opportunities for students to learn routines, building expectations, and to enhance student relationships. To mitigate this, multiple opportunities for school-wide assemblies and classroom presentations are recommended, in addition to a new student orientation to the Code of Conduct. Also, student suspensions had a significant decrease between that period of time as well. So let's talk about some of the strengths we saw last year. We've seen a decline in our office-managed behaviors in all all three levels, that's elementary, middle, and high. A decline in classroom managed behaviors, particularly in the elementary and middle school levels. A decline in evader reported incidents in elementary and middle. And a decline in in-school and out-of-school suspensions across all levels, as well as a significant decrease in long-term suspensions. We have seen an increase, which is a positive too, in the use and documentation of preventative strategies in all of our classroom levels, and an increased use of restorative practices across the levels. We also have had a decrease in reports of our emergency physical interventions that were necessary for students. Our continuing challenges, which are up on the next slide. Disproportionality in office managed behaviors, our VADER incidents and suspensions continue for students who are male, students with disabilities, and students of color. As mentioned earlier, for student mobility, it's 1 in 5 students who are with us from K to 11th grade. Our increase in a percentage of homeless students, and we've had an increase of 33% of court-placed and incarcerated youth, which this will be discussed more in our following slides. And I think Mr. Mike Panetta is now going to talk to you about next year's focus and the great work we're planning.
It'll be this year's focus that this slide is all about. So this is our current status at this point in time and our charges at this point in time. We took a look at review of department policies and procedures and saw an immediate need in emergency management procedures, more specifically crisis response at district and building levels. Although emergency management plans are in every building, we look to make these more operational and more user-friendly. In response to this, we've grown our partnership with Albany Police Department and set up a date to be trained in Incident Command by Homeland Security. Also in partnership with APD, we've developed the district response team to support buildings to design consistent practice and responses throughout the district. We've looked to realign in the oversight of supports for social emotional programs and disciplinary needs. We've split this oversight of elementary and secondary for more equitable distribution of support. In support of the Code of Conduct, we're continuing to conduct after-school PD sessions, professional development sessions with assistant principals to address reporting protocols in the safe school system. We have ongoing reviews with principals around the Code of Conduct, levels of interventions that can be utilized to support student behavior, such as restorative interventions, preventative strategies, and student support teams. We're also partnering with community agencies to create turnkey trainers for restorative practices to build capacity at each level. We continue to address disproportionality by reviewing data from subgroups to identify new supports and interventions for our neediest students. We look to replicate the RTI process, response intervention, from the elementary levels to all the levels to continue to identify interventions and supports at each tier. This will help us design a consistent method across buildings to look at data to respond to student needs. We look to enhance the implementation of positive behavioral intervention supports, PBIS, with emphasis on fidelity of practice at all buildings to support Tier 1 practice. We also look to expand PBIS efforts into the high school through the use of the Falcon Pride structure to improve the overall Tier 1 support system at the high school. We're looking to train additional staff in restorative practices and trauma-informed care and distribute supports equitably across the district to give each building what they need. We will continue to provide wraparound services accessible to students and families. The scope expands as we work with children who experience trauma. Students who experience trauma are greater risk for negative school outcomes and involvement in the juvenile justice system. So we've partnered with the STAR Commonwealth National Center for Trauma and Loss in Children. This is to provide ongoing professional development in this area. The district has also expanded its partnership with APD to remain better informed regarding students who experience trauma. This is a daily communication between APD and the school district officials regarding students who are impacted by an event involving APD. Building staff members are then informed by pupil personnel services that this student is now handled with care. In collaboration with the Department of Safe Schools and Violence Prevention, also known as Jack Grogan and Mike Wager, the Department of Pupil Personnel is committed in its partnership with the Albany Police Department in providing a more coordinated effort in responding to crisis involving students and/or staff. APD and the district has developed a core team to undergo multi-hazard planning for schools course, as referenced above with Homeland Security. After this, building and district crisis plans will then be reviewed. TCIS, or Therapeutic Crisis Intervention Supports, will be redesigned. This will then provide consistent crisis prevention, de-escalation, and intervention. Emphasis will be placed on training the safety and security staff. At this point, district policy procedures regarding emergency physical interventions will be reviewed. The assurance of discontinuance from the Attorney General's office outlines the disproportionality in suspensions of black males and students with disabilities. This consistently has been a challenge. Much of the work central to the Office of Pupil Personnel has begun to address this disproportionality. The office is looking to align resources equitably and build faculty and staff awareness to serve our diverse student body to a place of support rather than of punishment and disciplinary practice and isolation. The next slide is the scope of our work. This office will have a continued focus on preventative strategies and implementation of the plan to support the social and emotional needs of all students. We'll continue to support educating the whole child. Professional development will be targeted with ongoing training in the areas of crisis prevention, intervention, de-escalation, culturally responsive education, restorative practices, and trauma-informed schools. The goal is to build capacity within our district in order to effect positive change and sustainability. The office closely tracks all preventative strategies, PBIS implementation, as well as all matters related to discipline. We continue to work with the Department of Special Education as well as building leaders to combat disproportionality. All pupil personnel systems and structures are continuing to be reviewed through this office. Necessary adjustments to increase the efficiency and customer service across all areas of responsibility will continue to be made. And I'll pass it back to Ms. Canzoni-Ball.
And now for some recommendations moving forward. As you can see, the secondary RTI team is first and foremost on our list. To date, no formal framework or structure exists to support RTI 612. Excuse me. We've really seen a transformation at the way we handle response to intervention at the elementary level with the implementation of a K-5 RTI leadership team that's dedicated to this support. Some of them are actually in the audience this evening, and we thank them. Kathy Hutner and Brianna Olson, I believe Jessica's here as well. They really carry this work throughout the district and support all of our elementary buildings. Tanya Pennick is also part of that team as a psychologist. She's not here this evening, but we thank her for her work. We're recommending in PPS that a parallel system and structure be built to support the same RTI process, 612. Right now, there are 2 open lines in the existing budget that would be able to support this structure across all 3 middle schools and into the high school. It would include a school psychologist and behavior specialist to do this work. Like we keep mentioning, we're moving away from separating response to intervention behavior side of the house and academics and really merging that into, you'll hear the multi-tiered system of support MTSS model. It's the same type of work, but again, it's back to that whole child and looking at behaviors and academics together and how that's impeding a child's progress in the educational system. Raise the age mandate. As you may be aware, raise the age legislation is now in effect and continues to grow and impact us as school districts and as communities. In Albany County alone, it's estimated that several hundred students will soon be considered juveniles rather than adults, thereby requiring extensive involvement in the family court system as well as the school setting, which is a big draw on our resources, specifically in PPS, where our goal is to support children's social and emotional health and well-being. Youth court will be added as a layer of support services to process juvenile offenders. In order to meet the increased demands of the Raise the Age legislation, at this time, we're asking that a full-time court liaison position be added to bridge the gap between schools and outside service providers regarding system-involved youth for both school and non-school related matters. The position would be responsible for filing school-based person in need of supervision, or PINS, petitions and complaints. In 2016-17, we experienced a rate 5 times that of the number of PINs filed in 2011-12. It's a drastic increase that will not go away. So we want to dedicate a service provider to this work and collaborate with the PPS department to provide much needed services, support services, and linkages between community agencies and strengthen that homeschool connection. In terms of a school resource officer, we are at a point, a turning point, I think. It's extremely positive in our relationship with different community agencies, specifically the Albany Police Department. And as an approach to the preventative strategies, we're looking to cultivate positive relationships with police officers and the department. So we are requesting an additional school resource officer at the secondary level. Currently, there are 3 in existence. The Department of PPS is working with Jack Rogan and his team, as well as the APD. Lieutenant Gerasi is here this evening, so we thank him for coming and showing his support as well, to create a framework of consistent supports for school resource officers that would look similar across buildings or settings throughout the district. The SRO program, as we call it, the goal is collaboration with the district to promote the healthy development of students and serve in a non-traditional law enforcement capacity. So it's about socialization, it's about building relationships and positive rapport with students and families. The Albany Police Department is certified in trauma-informed care, and that's our goal as PPS to move towards as a district in the work that we're doing with our trauma-informed care initiative. Our goal is to reduce arrest rates and proactively address behaviors within the school setting before we get into a reactive mode. At this time, that concludes our portion of the presentation, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Adams.
Thank you so very much. Very nicely done. Excuse me. What I'd like to do is go to some of the next steps that we've been talking about as we coming into the school district, and as I have been analyzing various pieces within our district and looking at areas that we need to fine-tune and reorganize. One of the things that I am also proposing as we look ahead is a Student Support Services Division or department. And this Student Support Services will house those direct services and wraparound services which impact our children and youth. The focus of this department is on the services for our students which address those aspects which create barriers to student learning, especially those who are experiencing problems and challenges which reach beyond the classroom and the school setting. We are aiming to connect the dots of the areas of focus shared with you on slide 8 of the presentation this evening. Direct services are provided by means such as education and training, counseling, and academic plans, while the wraparound services are provided by means such as social and emotional support for students, consultation, and individual assessment. The 2 departments which would be immediately impacted with the creation of this Student Support Services Department are Pupil Personnel Services and Special Education. A few months ago, you heard the report from Special Education and the responsibilities required for our students with disabilities. The Special Education Department works very closely with our PPS department in the direct services and wraparound services provided to our students and their families. You've heard the report this evening from Pupil Personnel Services, and you've listened to the responsibilities required to support both our general education and special education students. These 2 departments are very closely related in the services that we provide. We are starting with these 2 departments so that we may facilitate professional development and build capacity of staff within the departments in order to better serve the students as we move forward. As we work through the details, we will share out with the board what the reorganization entails, the financial impacts of these proposals, and how we will enhance the delivery of customer service, direct services, and wraparound services for our students and their families.
Well, thank you. Thank you for an excellent presentation, Dr. Canzoni-Ball. Ms. Wilson, we'll start with you.
Thank you. This is a topic near and dear to my heart, actually. When you Ms. McDowell and Mr. Panetta, you were both speaking about the holistic nature of moving forward and also about trauma and its impact on students. We all know that there's the ACE score, the adverse childhood experiences. So you alluded to homelessness and things of that nature. And this is not so much specifically a question, but a comment. Things such as also being in foster care, all these negative childhoods. So when you said holistic, and I do see that you're trying to incorporate outside factors like outside forces like the police, are there any other multidisciplinary objectives that you have?
I think you hit on, is this on now? Many of the areas that we work with, and I think you had mentioned the increased collaboration with local colleges and universities to bring more interns and field work into our schools. Currently, last week actually, we just started a school psychologist intern to bring her work into our district. She specializes in behavioral interventions as well. So not only is that a learning experience for them, but they're bringing cutting edge strategies and research-based interventions to us. We work very closely with the New York State Defenders Association, John Kutro and Connie Fenton. They are very big members of the community, and we're doing our restorative justice work where we're really bringing that into a variety of settings and schools after certain events, whether it's a crisis event, something that's impacting students, or if there's student conflict. So we are trying to grow our rapport and partnership with a variety of agencies throughout the community. The Mindfulness Peace, Albany Peace Project with Bethany Gagne, we're doing a lot of work with her as well, all geared at providing positive strategies for our students that are rooted in research to get to the root cause of factors that you're outlining. And Trustee Wilson, just to piggyback and add to that, we have, I'm calling it a consortium, even though we've not officially named ourselves that, but we have been working very closely with the Mayor's Office, the Police Department, Probation, the Department of Probation, also our Child Protective Services, so that we can really make sure that we are all in sync and on the same page with not only what the expectations are, but when we are working with our families, that they understand that we are all connected, and so that those messages become very similar as we wrap around with our students.
I was just going to add to what has already been said, and we are trying to build some more, I'm going to say, prominent local ties as well to what you were just describing. We recently have become more of an entering a collaboration with OCFS for students who are entering out of placement. The proposal for the liaison is also one of those visions that would really directly connect students moving in and out of the system, making sure that barriers are reduced, getting them what they need upon entry, assisting with the entry back into a district, making sure that we have an appropriate educational program for them, all those things. So I want you to know we're also talking about looking locally for our trauma experts, if you're going to say, and expanding that vision as well. Right now we're working with some consultants from far away, but we definitely want to also expand locally too and make sure that we're bringing in partnerships. So it's a very good point.
Dr. Chator.
Thank you for the presentation. Over the last few years, we've had lots of personnel changes, a lot of intervention changes. So different things have been tried at different times. And, I don't know if you have the answer to it right now, but my question is, have you followed a cohort of students through their, to different grades? I know that there are differences between how the high school is versus the middle school and elementary school, but some of these elementary middle school students, we would have been in the system, gone through these interventions. Have you tracked that to see what's working? Because if you just look at the end, those people may not have received that early intervention, but the kids in the middle school would have seen it in elementary schools. So are things better for that cohort?
It's interesting because we were literally just talking about, the history, and we know just a small little snippet of history. And I think we're not there yet. It's something that we've definitely been talking about. You know, unfortunately, you know, Carrie's the third PPS director in 3 years. And before her was 2 long-time standing directors, and we would need to probably go through some archives and find out what interventions were tried when and what those cohorts actually are right now. But that's definitely something that has been a discussion. Go ahead, you want to add?
Just to add, I mean, from here on, I can say that I've never been in a school district, and I've been in several places that has collected the amount of data and really tracked students to the nth degree. I mean, at our fingertips at any moment in time, we look at that dashboard that Mr. Baker's team works, you know, day and night on, literally. And we have this all at our fingertips. So we are tracking everything, and you probably have seen that in our profile with the preventative strategies. We've seen spikes in the use of the preventative strategies, and that's all due to the great professional development that our people in the audience are doing the work with our PPS staff. So I'm encouraged by the level of data collection now, and we will be able to maybe speak more to that in the next couple of years.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Lang.
The student mobility factor, you described that a bit. And how many, that's the absentees, right, for the year?
I don't know. The 11th graders?
Yep.
Right. So I'll try my best to explain it, and then Mr. Baker maybe can jump in if he has a more statistically relevant explanation. So Patricia Wolf actually helped us with that, and it's a really powerful chart. One of the questions was, why was there no information on 12th graders? And we had that conversation, and basically years ago there was a system change, student management system, and the data was impacted, so it wasn't really clean data. What she was able to do was look at a snapshot, a moment in time, for all of those students. So if continuously enrolled would mean that they were here for 90% or more of the year, each year that they were here. So at the current, what? So the current 11th grade class, only 20% of them we can consider continuously enrolled. So that means there's tons of movement in and out, which you know the impact that it has in terms of a barrier.
But do you mean,
Since kindergarten, I apologize, since kindergarten.
So 20% of the 11th graders have been with us since kindergarten?
Continuously enrolled. So for each year that they were here for 90% or more.
And how many days, what's 90%? How many days would they have to miss?
So we have 183 school days, so yeah. Subtract 18 days from.
Ms. Roach?
Nice.
I just wanted to thank you for your presentation. It was very helpful to understand a little more about the numbers, to understand what we're doing with our kids right now. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
Yes, I just wanted to echo that. This is, wow, it was very thorough. Also a tad more overwhelming than I expected. These numbers seemed so large to me, and I don't, I'm not sure whether because there were 20 categories before, that it maybe kind of diluted the impact, but this was really, it seemed to really sort of jump out at me. So I think we need to give you all the support that we possibly can, and our children as well. But I'll ask my first question now. Yep. I noticed the positions that you have here, and you mentioned the behavioral specialist, psychologist, court liaison, school resource officer, but I also noticed in another document, I think it was the profile piece, you mentioned the homeless liaison person. So there's no budget impact there for that? Like you mentioned that you had right now an outside provider, but then you said you wanted to hire inside. So I just want to be able to say that, yeah, you need that support in the budget, or it's already taken care of, or.
Every district is required to have a homeless liaison.
Yep,
And
yep.
money is already budgeted for that position.
Okay.
We're just moving to an in-house model rather than relying on a third-party vendor.
Okay, okay, just wanted to double check on that. Thank you.
Ms. Savage.
My question is also about staffing, but it's a more global question, which is, we on this board, and I think I speak to for everyone, are very focused on equity rather than equality of distribution of resources. And so one of the questions I asked was about whether things were sort of even Steven at the middle schools in terms of whether there were Vader numbers were higher at one middle school or another. And I didn't fully understand your response because there's something I don't get about Vader, because the numbers you gave me in the response were very small numbers, like 50, but the numbers that in the chart were very big numbers. So there's some discrepancy there. But in the small numbers that you gave me, which I assume are the most serious Vader consequences, one of our middle schools had much higher percentage than the other two. And so my question is, and this goes back for now 2 years, I think, Mr. Hogan, that we've been talking about distributing our resources based on quantitative numbers that we know about the schools. Is it our intent to redistribute our PPS resources so that there is more resources rather than right now the resources are the same even though the Vader numbers are substantially higher as a percentage?
I could answer the staffing question, and then maybe I'll turn it over to Mr. Panetta to talk a little bit about the difference between the Vader discipline and reportable incidents. Regarding PPS staff, I mean, that's part of our charge. And what we're engaged in right now in working with our school behavioral support teams, which consist of the key players of the social worker, the school psych, the behavior specialist, and the school counselors, the guidance department. We're conducting an assessment to look at the efficiency and effectiveness really of staffing and the need. So we are actively reviewing all of that. Right now I would consider this a baseline year. We're kind of taking stock of everything. It's a fairly new model, as Ms. McDowell mentioned. And we are assessing the need moving forward. But we hear you, and we do
So
see.
ultimately, I'm not going to see the same, it's like every school shouldn't necessarily have the same thing.
Right.
That's
right.
not
I
equity.
think the best way to explain it is, I think I've heard it before, a base, every school would have a floor, like a base model, and then those that need more should be adjusted.
And I'll respond to the middle level comment about the Vaders and discipline and such. And we do see need at that middle school level for more support in that area. One of the things we spoke about is supporting the middle schools with an RTI process similar to what the elementary schools have. The middle schools have the most need right now by data. They have less staff to work with to look at that data than elementary schools do that have smaller numbers of students. We're looking to shift people up to those levels to have that. We divided ourselves, Carrie and I, amongst elementary and secondary to have that focus more at the secondary level to start having those conversations and looking at data and proper ways to help them move students forward and give the supports they need. I'm not sure about the question about the discipline, the Vader, or the
It was just that in the response that you gave me, the grade level reported Vaders were like in the 50-20 kind of level, but when we looked at the chart that you gave us at middle school, they were like 100 or 1,000. So something is different, but we don't need to take board time. We can do that offline.
Thank you for the presentation, and very impressive presentation. Thank you for the clarity and for the comprehensiveness of it. So, Dr. Kinzoni-Ball, you talked about a resource officer, and I just want to try to understand that. Is the $101,000 line item for a resource officer district-wide? Would that be one resource officer?
Right, focused at the secondary level.
Okay, and is a resource officer a layperson whom the district hires, or is the resource officer a police officer whom we get from Albany PD?
It would be hired through the Albany PD. So similar to the 3 officers that we have now, Officer Timmons, Hughes, and Blackwell. So it would be an additional APD school resource officer.
Got it. And that person would be secondary designated?
Focus, yes.
Terrific. That was so easy. Thank you so much. Back around, Ms. Wilson.
Just in closing, I'm like a half glass, half full kind of person, so I feel very encouraged by the things I've heard. To echo what Shardar alluded to, and also what I think is consistent throughout our meetings, is that we do want to see the data in like a cohort-driven way, which is no slight to what you provided, just a thought process, and that can help us improve our decision-making. Thank you.
Dr. Chator. Ms. Lang. Ms. Roach. No, you can ask that. Ms. Smits, because it's not identifiers. Sorry, we're just looking at a question and it's not an identifying student kind of thing.
And I don't know if I'm asking this question because I want to feel a tad better. But can you tell me how many students, say, a particular number represents? So in other words, what I'm getting at, you've identified the number of incidents that have occurred. Like, so, I don't know, like I'm looking at 5,000 something or other in Vader, right? I'm just making that up because I'm not looking. How are we talking? We're not talking about 5,000 students. We're talking about students who perhaps had multiple incidents.
Can you give me a reference on your page?
I'm so sorry.
If you go to,
Okay. So just pick secondary elementary. Yeah, just pick something here and just make it. No, too far. Keep going.
Madam President, members of the board, Ms. Smith, just for clarification to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. For example, on slide 5, for school violence.
Can you pull up the slide up there? Because Vicky's not able to, for whatever reason, we're not getting to it right now. No, that's not it.
In the profile? Yes, in the profile.
Okay.
I'm sorry, in the profile.
You want to go to the slide, then that way everybody can see it? If we could go to slide 5, please, and then that way everyone can see the same example, and I'll ask the question. So for example, and you can transfer this to other documents, but if we're saying that there are 324 reportable incidences, are we saying that that is a one-to-one correlation to the number of students, or does it include repeat infractions? When we are reporting our data, and that is the question, so whether we're looking at this slide or the profile, the question is, are these one-time infractions of many students, or are duplicate? In other words, I, as the student, I have had several infractions, and it's just the number of infractions, or is it a direct correlation one-to-one to the number of students?
It's not unique to students, it's just by incident. So there could be duplicate students in there, yes. Or more than one.
So you actually can, I mean, I'm not asking for us, but you can actually go in and say, oh, this represents 10 students.
Yes.
Yep.
Who have, okay.
So in other
You can
words,
pull up
if
an
you
individual
take,
student, say this student has 5, this student has 1, this student has 10.
Okay.
I was going to say to the 4 of you sitting there, but actually you were not here at the time. So as the board, we used to get for the high school and sometimes for middle school, we would get monthly Vader reports. And that's not a request or a demand about that. It's just that in there you would see not by the student's name, obviously, no identifying, but there'd be the number of repeat offenses as well as other information. So Vicki, Beck, you weren't on the board at the time, so you could see that while there might be people for whom there'd be 1, that often it was 2 or 3 or 4, and that would give you a sense, so we're not talking like 5,000 in that way. So.
That's an easy request, even though you're not requesting it, so we can certainly put that in an SBU. We have that information already.
If the board is interested, but just so you know, we used to get that on a monthly basis. We basically got, it was the serious reportable ones. It wasn't, it wasn't like talking in class, disruption, that
Madam
kind of
President, members of the board, I think it is important to note, because when you see the numbers, many times it does translate that it's a one-to-one correlation, and it's always important to have as much data as possible to make those data-driven decisions. But when you're looking at 324 incidences, to know that that really translates to, and I will exaggerate for effect, to know that 324 incidents, those incidents only represent 20 students, is very different than it meaning it's 324 individual students. So thank you very much, and thank you, team, for being able to accommodate that request,
Ms.
even though
Abbott,
it wasn't a
sorry.
request.
Well, now that it is. Now, I mean, I knew that it was easy when we had gotten them, and it certainly got them on a monthly basis, so that's a great thing. So, Ms. Savage.
I'm going to ask a question with all due respect to the resource officer in the back. I've never had any interactions with resource officers, and so I admire the intent of having a reduction in our school-to-prison pipeline. I admire that intent. I know that is what we are trying to do. However, I struggle with this concept that putting more police in the schools results in fewer children in the judicial system. And I'm wondering if we have very specific and clear policies about how those SROs behave, in particular around student privacy and whether or not they have access to student information, and around, for example, an SRO observing something in the school that they would not have otherwise been present to observe, and that resulting in something that might have been a school discipline situation resulting in a transition to the judicial system. So I'm open to being educated about it, but I will say that it makes me anxious to get more police in our school, given everything that's been going on sociologically around race and class and police. It just feels like a very, it creates anxiety for me to increase the number of police officers with access to our students.
President Adler, members of the board, and Vice President Savage. One of the reasons that we feel that we are working very closely with the Albany Police Department is building a better relationship. Chief Sears and I have had numerous conversations about how to improve that relationship with our beat cops as well as with our SROs that are in our buildings. One of the big disconnects that we have, not just here in Albany, but in many communities, is there's a human being in that uniform, but there's also a human being as a student. And how we interact with each other is really about building a relationship. And if I don't ever have an opportunity to interface in a positive way with you, whether you are wearing a uniform or not, it shapes my thinking of that interaction when it happens the first time or the 10th time. And so while I understand and I respect exactly what you're saying, because just the sheer increase in number does send a message, but I think it's what we're doing with that number and how we are working with what are those relationship pieces and that professional development that our SROs are going through so that we can build a more positive relationship between our students and law enforcement.
I hear you. I completely hear what you're saying. And that goes to how I opened my remarks by saying I understand the intent. I believe in the intent. The intent is good. Do we have specific policies around student access to student data and around when something happens, how we determine whether it ends up on a disciplinary route or in a...
And yes, we do.
Just to add and to build on that, we're really shifting the model of, like I had mentioned, non-traditional law enforcement. So what that might look like is a resource officer, sitting down for lunch with students, participating in after-school tutoring, going to basketball games. We see them now even walking students home, groups of students. Really just turning that model around and focusing on that relationship building and increasing the positive rapport.
So I think it's a really good idea, and I don't have to be sold on turning in a positive way the relationship between our students and the local police force. It's what neighborhood policing is all about, and it's what Albany has put in, and God knows if we had more people of color on the police force, that might help a lot also, and having them all live in the city. But that's another story that we can't control. So with no disrespect to the police force, for me, one of the things as to, there's a number of factors that I'm not sold on you're getting my yes vote to put that in the budget. And the reason is that, number one, I don't think that any of the resource officers in our district buildings, even those who are employed now, and I don't know where they're from, but this hasn't come up before, they were here before I was, should be people who don't live in the city of Albany if they're in our buildings interacting with our children, because that is the antithesis of neighborhood policing. So that's number one. Number two, I need to be convinced that inviting police officers for social and athletic events doesn't do the same thing that a $101,000 position does. Like, my problem isn't all of the sort of the lofty goals and the sort of not just lofty but actual realistic but good goals that you're talking about. Where I get lost is when you ask me to hire someone, and because then it feels like nothing. I mean, the Albany Police Force, I live in the city of Albany, of course. I'm thrilled that we have a solid police force, but I don't want to spend my money in a way that I don't need to when I have other needs in the district. And if the issue is to create trust between the police and our students, let's have a barbecue. Let's have a basketball game. Let's have them come every Friday afternoon for some reason. Let's have coffee and punch. But I don't get the hiring on my budget. I mean, I'm having a real problem with it. And I'm only one vote, but I seriously need to be convinced about the difference about what you're talking about. I really don't. Have them come to lunch. I used to go to lunch at North Albany with a little boy in kindergarten and first grade and second grade as his mentor. So have them come and have them have lunch if they care about our children and our community. Why are we paying $100,000? That's a teacher, that's a psychologist, that's a, you name it. So now you understand my position.
Just to respond to a couple of thoughts, we are creating a detailed framework that will be shared with you within the next month for an update. But you had mentioned about police living in the neighborhood. At least one of the SROs is a graduate of Albany High. So I'm not sure about the others, but just the rich history and conversation with that person alone about the needs of the students and people, and I believe the person lives here as well. So we are very aware of that.
Can you speak to the, why we can't just do all the things you're saying as volunteer activities, and why we have to pay $100,000 and have them actually as a hired employee?
We're looking at equity as well, as everyone keeps mentioning. So right now we have an SRO assigned at the high school. We have one at Hackett, and we have one at Myers. We also talked about how the middle school's needs are disproportionate across all three schools. So we're looking to level that playing field and provide needed supports because we do find these SROs as a very valuable resource. And I don't know if you can speak as a former middle school principal and a member of the district for over 20 years. These individuals are relied on and play a very valuable part in the work we do each day.
So that person would be assigned to Edmund O'Neill?
That's where we're looking at this point. I said secondary level, but if you look at where the needs are.
Sure. Ms. Wilson.
I just wanted to speak to also, you laid out that you had some external relationships, and Superintendent Adams also indicated there's a building of a consortium, and I just wanted to point to the fact that Albany does have a rich inventory of agencies that can help in these efforts. And it's kind of like a 0.5, so it's not a second question just about the SRO. I'm wondering if we can to kind of quantify what their deliverables are, because I think to everyone else's point, many of these initiatives can be completed by volunteers, so we want to understand what is their objective, really.
One of the major points that we're looking to implement is the anti-violence curriculum, which I believe only SROs are allowed to be trained in that curriculum, and we're looking to expand it and actually bring it down to the younger ages. I know it's been in the district previously. As our data will show, you're seeing an increase in certain violent and disruptive incidents and suspensions. We're looking to take a proactive approach, and we're not by any means experts in any area of law enforcement. So we're looking to proven and research-based curriculum that are out there. The GREAT curriculum is one of them, to work on that violence prevention model. So that would be one deliverable from the SRO. And again, I apologize, but this idea is still forthcoming, and you will have a detailed proposal coming your way.
Dr. Chator.
I like to make my decisions based on all opinions, and today we have the luxury of an SRO in the audience. If
He's
you guys-
actually a lieutenant, he's not the school
Okay.
resource officer.
Okay, okay, let's say he's representing the police district, so the police department. If you guys don't have a problem with it, can we have the officer present his views on an SRO and what they do, so we have a better understanding?
I'm going to say that that's something that we would follow up. I don't think that's, pardon?
So let me just kind of interject here. First of all, it will be coming in a more detailed report because this is just, as with other reports, it is just their recommendations that they're asking for, as with each report that's brought to the table. Jack Grogan actually supervises the SROs, so he would be the one that we would call on to speak to that. But currently our 3 SROs, 2 of them have been with the district for over 15 years. They are very active in our community as it stands now. I have seen them in my short tenure here at the numerous events that I go to. They are there working with kids. When I've been to buildings during the day, they are sitting down and having lunch and doing those kind of soft skills types of activities, but also they do the hard skills. They are coaches, they are mentors for kids, they work with our students in ways and build those relationships. That's what we're trying to foster and reach out at a deeper level. But when we have our more detailed report, I think we will add or include, which I know he is included, Mr. Grogan to facilitate that portion of the discussion.
And then if it's appropriate at that time and you want to bring the resource officers, that would be a good time to do that. So Ms. Lang. Ms. Roach. Ms. Smith. Ms. Savage.
This is not a question, it's just, I didn't start my remarks by saying thank you. I know I said it by email, but the quality of the data and the quality of the responses to the questions was, I'm going to say, unsurpassed in my experience in asking questions as a board member. The answers were direct and clear, and I could understand them. And you also went to the point of understanding why I was asking the question instead of just giving a superficial response. You made the response understandable, and I very much appreciate it.
Thank you, and I just did neglect to give a shout out to Megan Moran, who is our quality assurance manager, and she has put hours and hours into data mining for us. So we greatly appreciate her efforts. And again, Mr. Baker's entire staff as well, so thank you.
And I just want to thank you also because even in the short time here, you've started to sway my views on resource officers. Thanks to the superintendent's explanation, because actually there's a lot of things that we, you get on the board and then people would say like, so what do hall monitors do? And then they're not really sure. And what do the other people do? And so that's not something that you would ever get home on a Thursday night twice a month for if everybody came with the show and explained it all. But having clear and cogent responses even here shows me the thought process that went behind the decision to do that. But I would like, from what we talked about in terms of equity, now understanding there's one at Myers and that there's one at Hackett, that it would seem based on what the board's goals have been and articulated that person, if you were to hire that person and passed in the budget, that would be going to O'Neill because it now looks like we don't have one over there. So that would be something important to think about. So thank you so very much for a wonderful presentation. And we are up to budget development, which we got that run from our wonderful legislators. So let's see what we got. Mr. Hogan? He has no, you have no one by your side, Mr. Hogan. You're like,
Yeah, I'm all alone. I'll bring
Goodbye,
friends.
Student Support Services who leave en masse. Thank you all. Bye.
Okay, here we go with the governor's state aid proposal. This is always a starting point, and then the legislature works with it through the end of March, moments before we have to adopt something. Historically, the legislature has added money. The last couple of years, well, yeah, historically they have, but given the state's fiscal outlook, it may be a little bit more challenging than other years for the legislature to come up with more money. They kind of have to find it by doing other budget projections. So I just want to give you some of the highlights of the governor's proposal. The total aid increase is $769 million. It's a 3% increase. Last year was 4.1% overall increase. Foundation aid is $338 million. That's the largest state aid category. However, it's been estimated that about 70% of the foundation aid increase will be absorbed by the increases in the teacher's retirement system pension. If you're asking why is that, it's because the pension system changed their long-term assumptions on the rate of return of the investment. So they decreased their assumed rate of return in future years. They do all their actuarial evaluations and determine if you assume there's less rate of return, you have to increase the current income coming into the fund now, which is all of the school districts in the state. So we will be working with that as well. The expense-driven aids, these categories of transportation, special education, and capital projects, historically you spend and then you report it the following fall, and then you get percentages of aid based on what you spent. Those are expense-driven aids. So what's scary about this, there's a new twist in the budget this year in the governor's proposal that says, oh, by the way, in future years, starting in 2019-20, we will cap the growth of those expense-driven aids at 2% a year. So this is something we're really going to want to lobby about, because if you do a huge capital project, usually these are multi-year projects like our high school, but you could easily justify a 5% increase in like capital aid and then not get it because it's capped at 2%. The same thing, you know, a special ed student can cost anywhere from $30,000, I've seen them $150,000 a student. You could have 10 new students come into your district and be over the 2% cap, so now you don't get the aid you're supposed to get. So this I've never seen or heard of before, but it's very, very concerning for the future, not for next year, but for 2 years out. So we're going to have to do some work with that in the next couple months and just make sure everybody understands the impact to that to school districts potentially. The reason it's being done, it'll help balance and control state spending because their budget spikes when these expense-driven aids exceed like 2%. So they have to pay out more. So they're really trying to control the state budget. There's a pre-kindergarten increase again for 3- and 4-year-olds. That actually is an addition. Last year they kind of did the same thing. It doesn't appear, and again, there's always details that can come flushed out in the next couple of months, but it doesn't appear to do what we were looking for because we were one of the first entrants into pre-K programs. We're getting reimbursed at the lowest rates because that was a program we entered into. So we've been lobbying for probably 3 years to say, why don't you have all the rates be the same? Because districts that brought in programs later are getting paid a much higher per student aid. So it looks like here they're just trying to expand participation statewide. Community schools, there's a large increase in community schools, and I'll show you the impact to us as well. That's helpful. On one hand, it's very helpful. On the other hand, it's a carve out from your foundation aid. So think of it as restricted aid. We can't just use it to balance our budget. It has to be pulled out of foundation aid, set aside, spend it to get it reimbursed. So it forces, it's like mandated spending that you get reimbursed for, but unrestricted aid is always the best because then the districts can determine what's best. and we certainly acknowledge we have a real need for the community schools effort, but you still don't have a choice. Your choice is taken away. And after-school programs, there's an expansion of the Empire State Poverty Reduction Initiative. This was started last year. He's adding more money to it this year. We actually, this week, rolled out with that program in 4 elementary schools. A 5th elementary school, Delaware, is coming on February 1st. They required some changes in the building before we could have the program there. There's all these inspections. And then there's 2 middle schools are coming on. O'Neill and Myers are coming on January 22nd. So we're already involved in that program. There's also the Early College in Schools and Smart Start initiatives. Combined, it's $15 million. It's to create early college programs. And then the Smart Start program deals with new programs in computer science and engineering. So there are some concerns. This is a short presentation, but it does take a few hours of trying to gather details from wherever you can in different sources. But my kind of immediate concerns are obviously the cap on expenditure-driven aids in the future. That's a real serious matter. The charter school tuition aid, there is going to be an increase, but we're not really sure what it's going to be. And it's always been an ongoing kind of convoluted thing with the charter schools. The tuition's raised, and then there's off the state aid runs reimbursements we get, but sometimes they say things like, well, it's $250, but they don't say, is it like $250 or is it $250 more? So we're always struggling right into the late March on this, trying to get answers on, and sometimes it can be $1 million impact for us. Of what last year, as you recall, early in the year, it looked like we got $2 million of additional charter school aid. It turns out, we find out later that, oh, by the way, they're raising the tuition $2 million, so it's just passed through, there's no increase at all. So some things it takes a few weeks for everybody to kind of figure out how this is really gonna, when the rubber hits the road, how it's really gonna impact districts. So we keep trying to figure that out over the next few weeks. And then the pension increase, for our district are anticipated to increase by over $1 million. That's going to take a significant chunk of the new foundation aid, probably about a third of it. So the good news is it could be worse. I've seen it a lot worse. So you will see when we get to the end, we're actually getting some new money. So if you look at my next slide, I did it 2 ways because, as I mentioned, the set aside for community schools is restricted money, so you have to use it for a specific purpose. So if you take the total state aid versus our budget, when we move forward, we have to compare the governor's new proposal for next year to our current budget, because that's where we are versus where we're going. The governor's state aid runs show what they expect to pay you this year versus the new budget. But when we do our budget process, we have to compare it to our budget, not what we expect to get for money this year. So actually, that's going to help us a little bit this year. The numbers are also different from the governor's runs in total because there's a deduction for local share that doesn't show up in the runs. Pre-K shows up in the runs, but it doesn't even belong in that fund. It actually goes to a special aid fund, so we have to take that out. And then the community schools money is subtracted out because that's a set-aside specific purpose. So after these adjustments, this is really what it looks like for us. As you see the top line, the total increase in total aid is $4.2 million, which is actually pretty good considering the state economic picture. It's a 4% increase, but there was almost an 18% increase in the community schools funding. So when you take that out, it's still a really good thing, but it's a set-aside, is treated differently. Our real increase from our current budget to state aid is about 3.6%. Still, all things considered, that's pretty good for the current economic status or situation of the state. So the next steps are, we will continue, and I'm sure we'll be learning things for probably the next 8 weeks about the intricacies of the proposal. We're also going to continue the development of the 2018-19, the base budget in the first draft, which is provided to you on February 1st. I only really talk about this once a year, but the base budget essentially is going to be what is needed to continue existing programs. And then if there are mandated items that were required, you know, if you need more special ed staffing based on student population, or you need to add another section in elementary school. So it's based on mandates and existing, kind of almost think of a bare bone budget to meet mandates and continue existing programs. Even with that, we still look at those to make sure, you know, is there any capacity in here? If someone's asking for another gym teacher, do we have the capacity district-wide? Special ed, we look at that in all areas to try to bring you the best base budget that we can. The community school program does have a comprehensive plan right now, but the piece that's still being developed is the public needs assessment was a requirement of those plans, so we're going to be getting that information back, a needs assessment from the community, and that will create additional program development for community schools. And then we do have quite an increase in that area as well. The academic plan, I think we're in year 2 or 3, I think. 3. We're heading into year 3. So that we will again look at that, reevaluate that, update that. And then, as I mentioned, provide the first draft budget on the 1st of February. So that's kind of where we are. A 1% tax levy is about $1.1 million of revenue. And this is like throwing a dart at the wall, but generally just to continue our current programs and move forward is going to be $7 to $9 million in that range, assuming 3.5% growth, and we know the pension system is going to be a lot higher than that. So I would expect, and we have a lot of work to do between now and February 1st, but I would expect the draft budget it's a $240 million budget to increase 7 to 9 million. And here you see there's about 3.6 million available on slide 4 of new aid. So, like I said, it definitely could be worse. I was happy that we were over 2% this year, actually, considering all that was going on. Of course, I would like it to be 8%, but. So with that, I will turn it back to the president for questions, comments.
Woohoo, Ms. Roach. Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Want me to come back to you? I can. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Roach.
Oh.
Sorry, you.
I just want to say thank you for the presentation and for providing relatively good news today.
Ms. Lang.
So when we go back to our legislators to say you have to stop the 2%, is that our number one ask, even though that doesn't necessarily impact us this year? I'm just trying to grapple with where we are asking them to say, draw the hard line.
Right. I do think, and I'm sure NYSBA and the New York State School business officials, various groups are going to be all over these things. But I do, sometimes it takes often 2 or 3 years of talking for people to get familiar with the ideas and actually move it forward. So I would say this would be one of our top priorities because of the areas. And I'll give you another example. We had Durham bus services for years, and it rolled over for years at CPI only, which many years was 1%. We knew when we rebid that it was going to cost more because we had looked at current bids in other districts. It did increase over $1 million. Well, that's an example of, and we expected it to, because it hadn't been publicly bid in years, which was allowable under the CPI clause. So, but that's an example with a spike of $1 million in transportation costs. This would be, our aid would be capped at 2% growth only. We may lose a few $100,000 on that one transaction in aid in 1 year. So, and I can see it in capital projects. Now, I can tell you historically, they have never meddled with projects already passed because the schools went to the communities under certain assumptions. There were essentially state aid assumptions on those. So I would, again, there's no details available to this, but traditionally it would be for things passed after a certain date. Like if this becomes law in March, any projects after March would probably be under that if this makes it through the legislature, that clause.
Dr. Chatur. Ms. Wilson.
Keeping it positive. Thank you so much for this very nice presentation. I have started reading extensively into the budget proposal, so thank you for even isolating this aspect of it. I know that there's going to be like a restoration of some pre-K money, child care money, so which is positive. Also, we in this fiscal environment, we kind of were relatively unscathed, so that's additionally positive. And I just don't know if you have any, you kind of outlined them, but any kind of like, what's the word I want to say, like surprises that you think you could, like unforeseen sort of consequences of this proposal, even though we are relatively unscathed and there are some positives in it.
No, the biggest surprise is the cap in the future, potentially, of expense-driven aids of 2%. That's going to be an enormous impact throughout the state. But I can recall the governor talking about that 2 or 3 years ago, even, of how these expense-driven aids can raise all havoc with the state budget. But they're based on true expenses. We have to report actual expenses, and then the year later that the aid follows. So that to me is the scariest item. A lot of the other things, the pre-K, the community schools, the after-school programs, those are all just continuations of things that were started in previous years, and he's just adding a little bit more money to those. But we do benefit from those as well. I mean, the community schools is I think, going to have a big impact in this district for the students that it serves in the communities, and that could have never happened without the community schools aid stream that just started last year. And you'll recall that was terribly fuzzy when that was introduced as well, in terms of what we could spend it on. And so there are positives. I think any district that kind of got over 2% is probably doing good things, all things considered. The overall increase was 3%, but you have to remember, if other districts had the transportation example or special ed example, they may be justifiably getting 6 or 7% increases or 8% increases in those areas. So it says 3% overall, but it really totally depends on the specifics of every single school district of what's going on in that district in their spending patterns.
Ms. Smith. Ms. Savage.
I only have one question, and it's a fairly obvious one, so I'm sure it's been considered and rejected. Is there any reason we cannot eliminate some of our old pre-K seats, just sort of turn them back into the states and get some new ones at the better rate? Because it seems absolutely ludicrous.
Right.
So I'm sure you've considered that, and I'm sure it's been rejected for good, sound reason, but I have to ask the question.
No, I think it's worth exploring. It would be an interesting public relations thing, because we would be basically trying to eliminate programs and then restructure them. So we'd have to see. I think it's something we can explore. We'd want to be pretty certain we were going to get the new. Yeah. And I don't know if we'll be able to get it first and then drop one, but
So that
we
was
can
one.
explore that. I think it's something worth looking at.
So I was going to even be more radical, and I was going to say I think we need to go to our contact in the governor's office, like, so we're going to do away with our pre-K and then come back in a year, and then you can make us whole with parity, but anything short of that might help. Back to Ms. Roach. Anything else? Anybody have any other questions? No, we are done. Thank you, Mr. Hogan.
Okay, thank you.
We are on to grade configuration. I know we're ahead of schedule, even though it doesn't feel like it. So just to sort of open the discussion on grade configuration, we got answers from the last discussion about Arbor Hill. We got the maps showing blue dots where kids were and moving. And we got information on the expansion of Arbor Hill, if it was an elementary school, to take on the students from North Albany, with the concomitant creation of a middle school in the North Albany site, knowing that those were rough numbers. And I just want to open it by saying, for those who, Ann and I had actually talked about it, so I don't know if you added the numbers up together, but when you kind of add them together, it did not look, when you first add them together, actually the new scenario comes in at actually under the, and we have to ask for clarification from Bill about that. So I'm gonna, instead of going around like we do before, I'm gonna actually ask Ann to pose the clarifying questions to Mr. Hogan now, because when I worked out the numbers and then it actually exchanged information with her, it looked like instead of a $28 million price tag on the 4 middle schools where Arbor Hill was the 4th school and North Albany took up the elementary, it looked like it was 23.5, but the clarifying questions have to do with what that entails. So, Ms. Savage, go for it.
Bill, scenario 3 modified for the purposes of the board presentation that you just sent us, does that include a pool in the cost estimates?
The pool would be at North Albany? There wouldn't be, no, it wouldn't, because the YMCA has a pool there.
So, but right now we don't have access to the YMCA pool to service the needs of our students. So if we were going to do $1, like trying to get to an apples-to-apples comparison from
Right.
modified scenario 3 to the others, I, in my head, and I'm trying to validate whether this is the right thing to be doing or not, am adding in an allowance for pool access, whether that comes through some sort of access to the Y, or whether that's another addition that has a pool in it. But I put in my mind, 5 million, because you put in 5 million for one of the other scenarios. And so I'm trying to find out if I need to do that add in my mind, or if there's some other scenario for pool access at the middle school. And I have one other money question before
Let
we
me just add on to that. So I think you were talking to the superintendent at the time, so I want to make sure you heard what the genesis of that clarification question was, which was that when you when you look at the numbers you gave us with that new scenario, you find that it is, when you add together the Arbor Hill expansion to have a larger elementary school, and you use North Albany's to create the middle school for 500, the price tag is 23.5 million. It's 18 and 5.5, as opposed to the $28 million price tag to convert Arbor Hill to the middle school. So what Ann, when we were talking, pointed out is, ooh, that 23.5, although it's significantly less, if it doesn't include a pool, then maybe it's not. So what we're trying to figure out is, given obviously 4.5 million less is very attractive, independent of the issues that Jen raised last time about Arbor Hill, that the parent raised about Arbor Hill, and all of that. So if you can help us understand how realistic, and I'm not talking about a rough estimate of the cost, like what's missing from that $23.5 million price tag, if anything, and to make it equitable, let's say, example with a pool, are we talking about an additional 4.5 million, or is it less because it would be rental? Like, that's what we're trying to figure out.
Correct, right. And we do have some access to those areas now. But even if you potentially, what I would suggest is you put about a couple million. Even if you could buy that facility, you still have to invest in it. And I'm not saying we could buy it, but if we could, I think you'd be 2 million into it that way, as compared to if you got to build it on top of grass, there's your 5 million.
So,
So,
so the pool access is a range between, I'm going to say 3, 2 sounds unreasonably low to me, say between 3 and 5 million for pool service through some mechanism. Does that seem?
yeah, I think that would be fair.
And then the other question I had, two more clarifying questions about the money, and I'm sorry I didn't get these in advance. It just sort of like, there were too many different pieces of paper going back and forth. Gym, is the gym at North Albany adequate for a middle school gym, or would that be an addition? Because I didn't see that listed in the bullets. And I'm not understanding the issue with the $2.5 million for an off-site kitchen. You had included $2.5 million for an off-site kitchen in the scenario 4, which is Arbor Hill Elementary becoming a 500-seat middle school. It was my understanding that was because the kitchen that's at Arbor Hill right now would have to go somewhere else, and you were putting 2.5 in for that. So if Arbor Hill is a large elementary school in modified scenario 3, would we still have to incur that 2.5 because we got to move the kitchen someplace? Because
It wouldn't be nearly as much. The issue was if Arbor Hill becomes a middle school, the middle school menu is much more comprehensive than the elementary menu. They may have 3 hot meals a day versus maybe 1. So, and there's other options. There's never just a option. But in any event, if the middle school went in there because of the additional requirements of middle school's food programming, there's no way it could service like 6 elementary schools on the side as a central kitchen. So that was if Arbor Hill became a middle school. If it's going to remain what it is, you're adding, I don't recall, 200 kids or so. Then those that was felt those could be absorbed. It wasn't that many more meals per day from what they're currently doing.
okay, and so the gym?
The gym is, I mean, remember, North Albany currently handles like 450 students, the capacity, and we're only looking at putting 500 students in it. I think now that you're raising that, I think we would want the architect to just double check that and make sure. The thing with North Albany, if you did end up trying to build more things, it is very limited land, and that the site work is another whole consideration, which would require an in-depth study. But a couple of the concerns of North Albany is there's limited land, parking is not great in terms of the ability, the capacity, and there really isn't a bus loop there either. So, and if you create a bus loop, you're going to take away land. So, and if you create
And we
more
do
parking,
understand some of
yeah.
those concerns. And I don't think any of us are looking at North Albany as a dream, but it's difficult to look past that 23.5 when all of the other numbers are over 30. So that's why I'm trying to make sure that that 23.5 actually accounts for everything, because otherwise it's very hard for me to look at a taxpayer and say, and yes, I know this is state aidable, blah, 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 but it's still hard to say, hey, we should spend 36 instead of 23.
Right.
Because I don't really believe that 23, and I think that maybe a little more attention needs to be made there before we can make that.
What I'd like to have a sense of, because right now what I'm hearing and processing in a very vague way, and I understand we're all rough numbers, but again, it sounds like it's about a wash when all is said and done, which is important for, I think, the board to have in their heads, whatever that conclusion is in a rough way, because if the North Albany piece as a middle school was more expensive, then that's something to factor in when balancing Arbor Hill and the community and referenda and things like that. On the other hand, if you're talking about a wash, then the considerations move from it being financial to being what's best for the community, what's best for the kids. You know, that's, to me, that's really, really important. That once they look commensurate or cheaper, it becomes a very different conversation. So I don't know if the board's at a point, and I'm not stopping anybody from having more more discussion, but where now the point that was raised by our administration was, we may need, the next step is figuring out more detailed economics. So if we have, I'd like to find out what it would cost for the next step if the 2 options we're looking at are the original recommendation from the grade configuration committee or the one that we had just asked, which is now the modified 3? What would the cost be to move to where the next level is our understanding of real numbers? Because that factors in the shift on Albany International, and which would still have to shift, right? Albany International, if Arbor Hill became the middle school and then the Arbor Hill Elementaries went into North Albany, we would still need, okay. So to
Correct.
me, that's not a number I need to factor in because it's the same. All I want to factor in, which doesn't mean that you wouldn't work it up for whatever the whole board wants, but in my head, I need to wrap around what the, what the differences are, not what the same expenses are going to be, if that makes sense.
Can I just add on that, because I understand what you're asking, which is to move from where we're at now, which feels very much like numbers thrown at a board, to the next level of detail on scenario 3 as modified versus
I can
scenario
speak to that.
4.
We're gonna have a
5. It's 5. The other one, I think it's 5. I don't know. The numbers get confused. In talking about this question of turning Arbor Hill into a busing school, right? That's really what I think all of our reactions were viscerally to your numbers, at least they were for me. I don't want to take my walkable neighborhood school and turn it into a school where most of the kids are on the bus. That just seems counterintuitive to me in this culturally rich historical community that's loved that school. I mean, we just named a school after the first African-American principal of Arbor Hill Elementary. It seems incredibly ironic to me to then dismantle the school that he built. So when I was talking about that with people, the question arose, well, what if we went to the scenario that we all, I think, tried to take off the table last time, which was that Edmund O'Neill becomes Arbor Hill Elementary. We move lock, stock, and barrel, and we make that, and I know we just renovated it to be middle school, and then if you look at a map, Arbor Hill Elementary and Edmund O'Neill are 4 blocks apart, and most of the kids live in between. Most of the kids live between O'Neill and Arbor Hill. Just pull up Bill's memo and you look at where the dots are. They are mostly between O'Neill and Arbor Hill. And I'm sorry, Ellen's had her hand up for a long time and I'm monopolizing. I'm sorry.
And Tabitha's also,
I was gonna-
also got her hand up. I was just sort of thinking about, and this is just brainstorming here, Arbor Hill has more space available, for potential building or expansion. And I know it sounds like if we move a middle school to North Albany, we have to move the International Center. Is there room to build on some sort of annex for the International Center at the Arbor Hill facility, given that we want the International Center to kind of be co-located with an elementary school so that families can go to the same building? And given that Arbor Hill already has a lot of the community services that new arrivals might need.
We're finding now that we're out there that, and we're just adding a couple buses now with community schools funding. A couple tripper buses was a contract you approved tonight. Those kids before those tripper buses that are starting very soon, some of them actually most of them are having to take 2 buses. So I think the real answer is we know now where the neighborhoods where those kids are pulling, but the fact that virtually all of them are busing and all of them are 2 busing kind of indicates they're not anywhere near North Albany.
And they're not near Arbor Hill either?
Probably not.
Okay, so they're more south end.
Because some of them would even be walkers if they were kind of in that Arbor Hill area, depending on, the mile and a half, so quite a ways. So I think we'd want to look at that. I do, as you recall, we issued an RFP for district-wide architect and district-wide construction manager. Were scheduled January 30th to conduct interviews. We could, as soon as February 2nd, have an approval. To your question of, there's an enormous amount of work to be done. Someone needs to spend full time on this for a few weeks. If you really want to look at cascading effects and you want to look at site issues and it's like dominoes with this. Once you move a building, there can be 2 or 3 other buildings impacted. And someone's got to look at this that can actually focus on it and spend serious time, because it's a huge decision. So that person who is awarded the district-wide role could certainly take that on.
Tabitha?
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to point to Ann's point about the proximity of the 2 schools, because I think I have the unique perspective of having, when I was 5, lived in the viewable area of Arbor Hill. So there's the bridge that connects the community. So like you stated, if you were to veer off to the bridge, you could easily walk down the bridge. But if you were to walk straight up Colony Street, you indeed would encounter Edmund. That's how close they are. It's just maybe from a perspective thing. The major thing, I think, is the population growth. Like to the parent who stated, we don't even want this school. But however, the major thing is, are their children going to age up into a middle school in that population, in that neighborhood, or are they going to be largely still elementary? That's what's going to really inform my decision, quite frankly, is that whether they're going to be cohorts of more kids in the age group going to be more so elementary aged, or that would kind of really dictate what my thoughts are, in addition to everything else everyone stated also.
Can you expand on that a little bit more? I didn't fully understand what you said, especially because we talked about using this sort of balanced feeder school approach to feed our middle school rather than it being a neighborhood middle school, so I'm not really understanding what you're saying.
So if it's unpopular with a parent who has a child currently at Arbor Hill, for example, but is their child aging up into elementary, or are they going to be at Arbor Hill for a while? That's what more so my concern was. So it was more so like an age group thing for the population that lives in that location.
What do you anticipate the cost would be for the next level, regardless of which scenarios we're going to be saying, please work those out in terms of the cascading effect? So we're hiring these people. Does the money we spend then, do we pay by the piece, by the work, or is it annual, or how is it going to work in terms of working this up for us?
Well, I think they would start large, conceptual, of if this becomes X, then these things are going to roll.
Not the work they're going to do.
No.
How much will it cost? How much do we have to pay to go to the next level, let's say, with 2 scenarios?
Right. I think I would ask, I think we would just want to get an estimate. I mean, it's really hard to say. They're just like hiring attorneys. There's professional fees, and it's time worked. It's whatever we're getting into.
Because this is totally out of pocket, right? This is unreimbursable, totally out of pocket money that I'm not saying we don't need to do this kind of work. I'm just trying to wrap around this.
Well, usually when you're doing pre-capital work, as if a referendum is passed in the near future, it can be part of that. But then, of course, that increases the cost of what you're proposing. But you do get building aid on it. So I can ask some questions and try to get, I think we got to figure out how many scenarios, what are we looking at? And then we'll kind of know, we can try to figure out the workload.
Okay. Anne? Anybody else who didn't have a question? Please.
I think that the answer is either 2 or 3. I don't think that we're talking about more than 2 or 3 scenarios. So that defines that. But I also wanted to just point out one more micro detail, but I think it's an important one. Scenario 5, as it appears in the materials that you gave us, had Myers at 650, Hackett at 650, Arbor Hill at 650, and North Albany at 350. I don't understand why that was the scenario rather than Myers at 650, Hackett at 650, Arbor Hill at 500, and North Albany at 500, which is more consistent with the overarching message that we ought not to have one middle school dramatically different in size than the other. I tried to pull together the numbers by taking bits and pieces from the other ones. And of course that, what I just described, which is Myers 650, Hackett 650, Arbor Hill 500, and North Albany 500, is the most expensive, if I just pull together the pieces. So maybe that's why it was discounted. But I don't really think we should consider scenario 5 as presented in here with North Albany at 350, because poor North Albany has been a stepchild for the entire time I've been aware of this district, and we don't want to do that again.
Right.
So if we're going to look at scenario 5 at all, which is O'Neill becomes an elementary school and North Albany and Arbor Hill become middle schools, I think we have to do it in the context of a 500-seat middle school at North Albany, unless that is physically not possible, because I just can't imagine us supporting a tiny little middle school at North Albany and 3 large ones other places for the reasons that the Grade Configuration Committee laid out so succinctly.
Okay. I can tell you what I believe. The first year and a half of this, I was actually like a co-chair with a consultant. The last year and a half of it, you had 3 co-chairs, and I was just kind of supporting it as necessary, so I didn't attend every single meeting. But I believe what you're referring to, why was the one school smaller? At that time, the concept was to have 3 large middle schools, and by the way, we needed a 4th, and it would have to be about this size. The other thing the committee looked at is the long-term cost of staffing. You can run more efficient teacher loads, special area loads with 600 or 650 than you can with 500. You know, so that was part of it as well.
If that really turns out to be part of the reasoning, then we really need to understand that from the get-go, because then maybe we're talking about something radically different. I mean, why would their preferred alternative have been 650, 650, 500, 500, if in fact the reason for 5, I mean, just like we have to be consistent about the way we compare
Right.
these things. We can't change the criteria depending on which scenario we're looking at.
Right, and even the 350 wouldn't have been overly, because that probably would have forced you into 3 teams instead of 2. So that school, even though smaller, you know, on the flip side, you would have a smaller student to teacher ratio, but obviously there's cost to that. So that was looked at in terms of, and discussed at one point in those series of meetings.
So, I mean, I could let Ann say it, but she's always stealing my ideas, so I'm going to say it, which is, one of the things that has to get factored in to the next stage, I think, rather than waiting for a 3rd step, because then it makes it, right, it drags, and it makes it more difficult to comprehend what we find in the 2nd step. Like we get an answer, let's say if we just go to what we're talking about, scenarios, cascading, just the building, the cost of building and renovating. We still don't really know how to appreciate that and how to actually assess it if one of the scenarios has less teams needed than the other scenario, because we know the most expensive thing in any school district is the annual cost of its staff. It's understandable, and we're not denigrating it, but it is the largest cost is the teaching staff and the administration. So it sounds like from the conversation that really the next stage we need to get to as a board is figuring out which 2, or if we need a 3rd scenario looked at, or if we're really looking at 2 but tweaking 1, and then to find out what the cost of running those numbers are, and then to add to that the operational differences. Like I said, if one requires one less set of teams, it's why we have 1 high school and we don't have 2 or 3. Because when everybody talked about smaller schools, we all nodded, we understood over the years that was an important goal, but we couldn't afford it. We could not afford to run 3 different schools because of the administration and teaching costs.
Right.
So that's what I'm thinking.
The
Anybody
other
else?
piece to why 350 is the school is built right now for a pre-K 8, and it can hold 450. There'd be a lot less renovation needed at North Albany if it were simply housing 350 students. It's a $12 million price tag.
Right. The only problem with that, again, on equity, and Anne, I think, was, when she was talking about it, not that she left it out because I know we all talked about it, is that another factor of running a very small middle school in addition to the other larger ones is, I think by default,
there is a built-in inequity because you're not going to have the same kind of teams or opportunities or after-school stuff, or it just, you can't help but have that happen when you have 650 and then you have 300. It's like, you know, I mean, that's an easy math, right? That's where they're double the size. So while you may not have only 50% of the opportunities, you're going to have significantly less. It's, you know, there's no ski club at North Albany. There's no jazz band at North Albany. There's no, obviously, it just, we are building in obsolescence and inequity by doing that.
Right, and this was rejected by the committee, scenario 5.
Right.
Yeah.
So no, that's why when, I don't know that, Anne, we sometimes get the numbers wrong. I think what you're talking about is the.
Scenario 5 was actually the second one presented to the board. If I've got this right, I think I've got this right. I might have the scenario numbers wrong. You put them on the thing. They changed from scenarios
she's
to
right.
options or something.
Okay. You're right, that was their second
Scenario
recommendation.
2, which
Right.
formerly known as Scenario 5,
Right.
was the second choice of the committee, right?
Okay.
Scenario 1, formerly known as Scenario 3, I think.
Right. No, you are correct now that
Right.
I look at it.
Should have named those recommendation 1 and recommendation 2.
Yeah,
so it wouldn't be
somehow we just need to get,
basically what it was. So just
we're done.
So, if no one has anything that they want to say right now, other than, yay, I want to, you know, adjourn, then what I'm thinking is we find out what the costs of running 2 or 3 scenarios are, and we also ask the district staff to explore the economies of scale issues of smaller and larger that. And then when we come back together on February 1st, we'll have already had the interviews, and I would like to give everybody homework that I know we'll all do the night before we come back, me included, which is come back and try for us to come to a conclusion, each of us, about, like, you might say, I want 3 scenarios, I want 2 looked at, and which ones they are, and see if we can get to that point. Because again, we're not making decisions at that point, other than what we're charging them with once we find out the money, but what we're charging them with working up for us. Does that make sense?
Is one of the scenarios putting North Albany at 500?
It's whatever you want it to be, and I'm not trying to be
Whatever-
funny
okay,
by
okay.
that.
But you had just said
Go
that-
back and, now that we've had conversations, now that there's been, and if you have, and by the way, if between now and February 1st, when you go back and read the stuff, you have questions, send the questions in. That's what we talked about as being this format. So, you know, there's more stuff swirling around, but whether you come with questions, whether you send questions in for answers or you just do your own deliberating, let's try to all come back on the 1st with an idea of which scenarios we think are the ones we want to explore in the next step. It's a sort of what we can live with scenarios. Does that make, I hope, sense of some sort?
The other piece we should do,
No,
I
no,
would
no, no more
recommend-
pieces. No, we're done.
You know what? We should update the demographic study again. It's been 2 or 3 years, and
Will that impact, I'm not trying to be funny, will that impact the homework that we just talked about?
it would be a separate, the firm that did it last time, we would get a quote to do an update, do the same things, just update it. It's 2 or 3 years old.
How long does it take from the time we sign the contract to the time the work is done?
I'm gonna guess they're probably gonna want like 6 weeks.
6
Oh,
weeks,
that's a lot better
okay.
than 6 months.
I did just reality check the prior one versus where we are today. I don't know if anybody else has taken the time to do that, but the prior, well, I didn't mean you, I meant like paid people whose job this is, right? I just was curious to know if I look at the demographic study, the most recent one, and I look a year and look at what they predicted would be the case in this academic year, where are we? And it's not far off. It's in the ballpark. So I found that reassuring. I'm still okay with getting the next one. I just was reassured by that.
Thank you. That's really important, so thanks. So can I get a motion to it? Oh, so sorry, I'm sorry, Tabitha.
I apologize. Can you hear me? Okay. So, Anne, when we were both grabbing the mic, you said what I was alluding to, what I was going to allude to is that North Albany does jump out from a numbers perspective as being like it's just basically alone in a lot of senses. So that's something that we should probably problematize when we think about how we're going to adjust this. And I do know that there's a lot of different shifts and movement in terms of housing and things of that nature, especially in Arbor Hill. There's going to be like other developments made. There are developments being made. And the final thing is the census is 2020. So I don't know if that can inform us any better, or if they have projections or any other type of data, but that's the major thing.
I think those are good points. The only thing I'm going to say about the 2020 census is that if we, this board does not come to a decision long before the 2020 census, we are going to have middle school problems, major crisis. And if not, then we really were totally off on demographics completely. But it really, by then we should have, I mean, we talked about into the future, it's now 18. We talked about not in 18 doing a referendum, but possibly May 2019. Having to do that, because then when you back off of building, you would then be like at the 20 or 21 ability to house the kids. And when you think about it, that's 3 years from now, and then O'Neill would be on its 4th year of existence, right? Will be 4 years as O'Neill, as opposed to West Hill, which would add a 5th year, right? So that's sort of the only reason why, if we waited to the 2020, we would, if all the numbers are correct, we would be in a big crisis. So, yeah. So, motion to adjourn. Any other questions? I don't want to cut it. Okay. Motion to adjourn. Ms. Roach, seconded by Ms. Smith. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you all.